Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shilpa, and it's a pleasure for me to extend a very warm welcome to you all to the IAA Voice of Change Gender Portrayal from 30 seconds to 3 hours. Can we start off by giving all of us a warm round of applause for being here today? It's an honor and deep pleasure that today we are joined by Dr. Srimati Tamilisai Soundararajan, Honorable Governor of Telangana and Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry. Before I invite her on stage, can I request you all to kindly rise for the national anthem? Thank you. And may I request our Honorable Governor to step forward and light the ceremonial lamp. And I also request Mr. Avinash Pandey, Mr. Srinivasan Swamy, Mr. Abhishek Karnani, Ms. Neena Jaipuria, and Ms. Rani Reddy to join our Honorable Governor to light the ceremonial lamp. And thank you everyone for doing the honors. So let me start off by saying that women have been misrepresented over centuries. The way we feel, the way we think, the way we are. And honestly, that's not even a mystery. Yes, most of us do carry a natural caring instinct. We are known for our affection and warmth. We also are unapologetic for who we are. We are brave, we are courageous, we are not afraid to start a business at 74 or enter the modeling world at 57, to shave off our heads or go on a motorcycling trip with our girl gang. We are happy to make our own tables if we don't get a seat at one. Women are being misrepresented. For all of us who've had at least one woman who has made a deep impact on our life and our choices, this event here is an opportunity for all of us to create a deeper impact on someone else's life. A journey which started in the year 2021 and continues to take all those steps required to make tangible change in the way gender sensitivity is showcased, shared, and perceived by all those who are at the helm of content creation and marketing in India. This pioneering initiative by the International Advertising Association is intended to create a platform where we come together to not only deliberate and discuss, but also educate each other and learn various creative ways to empower effective change. So thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you for bringing your complete self here and for a research study which was done in partnership with the UNICEF, conducted by the Gina Davis Institute on Gender Representation in Advertising. To set the context for the same and share with us more about this research, we have with us Ms. Gitanjali Master, a public-private partnership specialist at UNICEF India. She has been with the organization for over 16 years and has in-depth knowledge of child-centered programs. Through her work, she helps embed responsible business practices within and across business ecosystems and value chains, while also supporting key program results for children. So ladies and gentlemen, can we please welcome her with a warm round of applause as she begins this event by sharing with us more about the research.
Thank you so much, Rani for organizing this with the IAA, and I'd like to, at the outset, mention that UNICEF is extremely grateful to the International Advertising Association, whose initiative this is, the voice of change, and how we're very delighted to be their knowledge partners in this journey. So I'm just going to step back and share a little bit of a very short story before I get into this research. And I remember maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, we were on our field trips, as we always do. We go into really the grassroots, and we were at some place, and I remember this girl called Vidya telling me, we were talking in a group about what do you want to be, what do you want to do, and young girls are so full of, aspiration and drive. And she said, actually, do you want to really know what I want to become? And I said, yeah. So she said, I want to be a policewoman. And I said, that's wonderful. So she said, but I don't think I can. So I said, why would you say that? And she said, no, because every time we talk at home, what I'm told is that girls shouldn't be, why should they get into this kind of work? And when I question that, the next time something is appearing on television, be it a program or an ad or something, and in which a girl is doing the typical chores or things that she should, I'm told, see, and you'll see for yourself what girls are meant to do. That was back then, and 3 years ago, UNICEF globally, were very, very keen to see how do social norms, cultural norms in any society influence girls and boys. And what is the kind of society then, by being influenced, that we create for ourselves? And I think that question was a starting point for us to think about engaging with the kind of content that is created. I have to say here that I feel personally, and I think I speak on behalf of UNICEF, there is a lot of advancement, movement in content creation being equal, in content creation being non-gender stereotypical, in content also being very positive over the years, and things have honestly moved. However, we also realize that there is room to do more, and not in a negative way at all, because I think all the partners of the International Advertising Association, and we really met so many of them now, they have really made efforts and wanted to actually create content that is equal, that is non-gender stereotypical, that is embracing for girls and boys. And that's where we started from. We never started from, a space where, oh my God, nothing is happening. Lots is happening in the country today, and it's very positive. How can we still do more? That's what Voice of Change is about. So back then, we reached out to the International Advertising Association. All of them were extremely embracing to want to do something in this area. And so that's when we, as UNICEF globally, because that's what we do, we create evidence. We try and generate robust evidence to be able to take action. So we partnered with the Gina Davis Institute and, of course, International Advertising Association to see how we could actually do research on a set of ads in a particular year to find out what exactly are the ads telling us. Yeah? And I think that was the first step that we took. Now, this research was done looking at the top 1,000 ads to see how there are different dimensions of advertising that are coming through. And that's really what I'm going to share very quickly through the presentation today, to give you insights into what is happening in what are some of the nuances, if I can say, in advertising that are getting captured, and what can we do with those. So this was really the backdrop, and I wanted to spend like literally just half a minute on this. We know that, when I gave you the example of Vidya, it was about gender socialization. What is the gender socialization which starts before a girl is born, right up to when she's 18 and then beyond forever? when people say we're working for women's rights, some of those perceptions about women are not formed when women are 25 or 30. They're formed when a girl is 3. She's told she can do some things and not do some things. And I think that's what we always should bear in mind, because that's when the inequalities sort of start beginning. And that is not just inequalities for girls. It's also inequalities for boys and men. The supposed to be in a certain way begins very early in life. We know that there are agents of socialization. Now, agents of socialization are us, families, institutions. They all reinforce these stereotypes. And then, of course, there is also advertising, there is content, there is films, sometimes very positive and sometimes can, in a very subliminal way, you know, veer us towards some kind of stereotypical norms. So this was, as I mentioned, and I think, you know, I won't go there again, this was a journey with Gina Davis, with the International Advertising Association. And they use a certain code. The Gina Davis Institute uses a certain code to bring out some nuances of advertising, which we, you know, let the experts do. So I'm going to very quickly move on to the findings of this presentation. Okay, so first of all, in terms of prominence, you know, it's that an equal number. It's not like women are not appearing in ads. Of course, women are appearing in ads and pretty much equal to men appearing in ads. When we talk about screen time and speaking time, in fact, it's fairly dominated by women and girls. So it's not, you know, the immediate thought that, oh, girls are not being seen in ads or they're not speaking much in ads is also not true. They are, and that's what the research found, that they have enough and more screen and speaking time. Globally, that's also the trend. So there's something that Gina Davis has got, which they call the C-Jane test. The C-Jane test is, do you see one leading, co-leading character? Is it a woman or a girl? And yes, they also, all the ads passed this, 77%. Now, this is where we're going to get into the little bit of the underlying issues, right? So if you think about it, female characters, where are they represented most? Beauty care, personal care, fashion, accessories. Where are they underrepresented? Banking, media, travel. Again, if we just get the gist of it, mostly women are around domestic and beauty products. That's what the research said, right? That's what the research showed, that they're mostly selling domestic beauty products, and that's where they're most prominent. Now, again, it's very nuanced. Females are mostly being shown in their 20s. There's a certain appearance, and we're going to come to that. Men, more likely in their 50s, you know, and if you can kind of see the age groups as well, ages 20 to 29, more women, and very few women in the 50+ category. Again, the characters of lower income communities are underrepresented. We just wanted to find out what's going on deeper into the ads, and therefore this insight came as well. This was important for us, you know, and I think UNICEF globally works very, very significantly in the area of moving past appearances. You know, everybody and all children, especially all boys and girls, are equal, and therefore this for us was also stark, that what are children seeing? They are seeing that characters with dark skin tones are underrepresented. And so there is a question for us. We need to address it. Colorism is evident in Indian ads, right? So if you look at it, in 66%, there is as you can see, a lighter skin tone. And here, we're just getting a little bit more into skin. Men are being shown to have a darker skin. Women always in ads. Well, as you can see, 67% always with a light to medium light skin. Again, body type. Female characters 4 times more have a certain body type. Small, petite body type. That's 42% of ads showed that. Now we're coming to the quality of representation. Again, so we've talked about skin, we've talked about body type, appearances, etc. So female characters are mostly likely to be shown as, better than average looking. So obviously we discussed in IAA and us went deeper into what is really average looking, who defines it. So those questions were there even with the research. But of course, the top level was, because somebody can ask a question, because I asked that question. So what is stunning? What is very attractive? Who decides that? But if you talk about, and this is something we learned from the study, because the next time we go ahead and do another study to benchmark this study, we will try to define these things better. Who decides what is stunning, attractive, right? So, however, I think this came through quite clearly to us that they are always in a certain type. And again, upper class female characters, like they already said, the lower income strata was not very represented. Not getting into appearance. Now, if you look at this, the whole sexualization or objectification, if I can say, so looking at almost 6 times more likely to be in revealing clothing. So everything is wearing, it's very underlying. There are more women in ads, they are speaking more in ads, but what are they doing in ads? And how are they being portrayed in ads is something that we all need to think through. So I think gender troping is pretty much like I said, it's there for men and for women. Caretaker, man, girls and women in another kind of role. So those pieces were pretty much common to both genders. Again here, if you look at this whole paid occupation piece, men, if you see, actually working 16% as opposed to 9% in women. In paid occupations, 25% as opposed to 11% in females. And that is really disguised work. Women taking care of homes is actual work. It's a lot of work. But being shown as, paying and then contributing in terms of money to the family, women are not being shown, and you can see the difference. Again, leadership. What are the life skills we want to give to the girls today? And we want to give to the boys. It's never one as opposed to the other. They both are equal. So I think there, when you have leadership qualities, a girl should be shown in leadership positions as much as boys are shown in leadership positions. Again, if you look at this, decisions about the household, so that's what it is, So of course, girls and women are taking decisions in ads and in content. What are the decisions they're taking? About what is coming into their household as cleaning agents or groceries, or is it also something else beyond that? And men are obviously taking decisions about their future, policies, finances, caretaking and parenting, while a lot of content is trying to move towards showing men with children. If we really think about the context, it's always fun, it's always light. Whereas a mother, when she's with her children in ads or in content, it's always very, it's got to be done, and it's a way of life, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So mothers are 3 times more likely to be shown as excellent parents than fathers. Can we show it the other way around? Just a thought. I I think this is more detailed, but shopping, cleaning, preparing meals, women. Primarily, predominantly women. Again, this was quite interesting, you know, and somebody at one of the road shows that we did, that IAA did in other states, there was a content creator who shared this experience, you know, that men are shown always in the, you know, what are they seen doing? Women are always shown in a bedroom, clearing up or doing whatever in a kitchen or in a living room. And men are where? In offices, in outdoors, in sporting events. There's nothing wrong that men are there, and nobody, I mean, I'd just like to reiterate in the middle of the presentation that we as UNICEF only present evidence. Then we start to analyze with partners, what can we do with this evidence? It's not wrong that a man is shown in the office, it's great. But can we also show women in the office? It's not wrong that a mother is looking after her children, but can we also show a father to be looking after them? So, you know, in the end, I'd just like to share that there is some amount of work that has happened. The International Advertising Association, you know, they have actually led this whole initiative, Voice of Change. They have become the catalysts. They have become, I would say, the sort of pioneers to take this whole research and take it to another level and see very slowly how you can use building blocks to go from point A to point B. We're already, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've already moved the needle. It's not like the needle is static, it's moved. How do we continue to move the needle is what this discussion is about. So I would urge everybody here to, you know, think about what we've had as a discussion today, take back, and this presentation could be shared, we'd be happy to share it, and then see what each of us individually or in our professional capacities can contribute to the lives of every boy and girl in India. Thank you.
Can we have a round of applause for Ms. Gitanjali Master for sharing with us the research in detail, which is going to be the premise for every action that we'll take. And before I ask her to take her seat in the audience, can I request Ms. Nandini Dias, Honorary Secretary, IAA India Chapter, to please join us on stage and present a memento to her. Moving ahead, I'm going to take a cue from what Mrs. Gitanjali Master left us all with. The needle is moving, but how fast or how slow is the question we all need to ask. We are joined today by Dr. A.L. Sharda, Director, Population First. She spearheads the media advocacy campaign for gender sensitivity, Ladli, which had initiated conversations with many influencers in print and electronic media, script writers and other content developers through awards, fellowships, workshops and consultations. She was a member of the CBFS and also initiated gender analysis of ads and films in print media. She's also been appointed as the international consultant by the UNFPA Bangladesh. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it from her. Can we please invite on stage Dr. A.L. Sharda, Director, Population First.
Thanks to IAA for inviting me for this event. And I'm going to talk about the bigger changes that are happening and why they are happening. And it's not just about advertising. So I believe that change is inevitable and it is a continuous process. Whether we want it or not, change keeps happening. And it keeps evolving, the world keeps evolving. New technologies, new markets, new twists in geopolitics, social movements, and events and incidents that jolt us to look at the world differently. So it's always in a flux and change is constantly happening. The question is, do we wait for the change to happen on its own and take its own direction and move in directions that we have not anticipated, or we prefer to have a clear vision for a better world and work towards it, bringing it in a systematic fashion. So the dream of Ladli is to have a world where women live with dignity, have equal opportunities, and are able to exercise their agency and choice. This is our vision, this is our dream. So we at Population First believe that we need to work systematically at chipping away the patriarchal attitudes, ideologies, and institutions which undervalue women, rationalize discrimination, justify violence by providing an opportunity to people to stand back and look at the world, introspect, choose what needs to be changed, and do something to change it. And we have been at this task for the last 1.5 decades. We started in 2007, and we have traversed quite some distance, influencing the influencers, networks, leaders, regulatory bodies from media and advertising industries. Though our largely media and advertising awards for gender sensitivity are the most visible, we have been working tirelessly and silently over on various other aspects, such as capacity building through workshops, innovative campaigns and fellowships, developing a supporting ecosystem by getting the buy-in of senior leaders, advertising leaders, media leaders, by collaborating with IAA, ASCI, ASCI, SINTA, Screenwriters Association, Network of Women in India, Press Club, Editors Guild, etc. Today, we are glad all our partners have owned up the cause and are doing amazing work. Sometimes it feels nice to be overlooked when people take the agenda forward on their own. It feels nice to be marginalized or overlooked. And I'm very glad that this is being taken forward by IAA in such a big way. This event is an example of the commitment of some of the leaders from IAA, particularly Mr. Ramesh Narayan, Megha Tata, Neena, and of course, Nandini. So I thank you all for this. And so I'm glad that this event is happening and that it is happening in Hyderabad, where I am located now. So we are happy with the fact that needle is moving slowly but steadily. We see change everywhere. A research study conducted by us called Nirbhaya and After, reporting on rape in India, showed that there is greater gender sensitivity in the reporting, with more consciousness of the need to protect the privacy of the survivors, avoidance of victim blaming and re-victimizing, and more balanced reporting. The digital publications are giving the journalists an opportunity to write long-form articles on a number of issues which do not find space in traditional print media. So we are able to hear the voices of the marginalized through these well-researched and articulated narratives on these online platforms. With the media going more for digital publications and not print papers, there is a reason to hope that even the regular newspapers will have more scope to address issues of gender equality, diversity, and inclusion. But we still have a long way to go. Similarly, a study conducted by us based on the weekly gender scoring of ads that I have been doing for the last 15 years, for last 1 decade, for the Campaign India magazine, brought out some interesting findings. Firstly, there are very few ads which are falling in the category of gender offensive ads these days. Most fall under the category of gender neutral, and a number of them are falling under the gender sensitive and transformative ads. Secondly, ads which cater to women and youth, young women and youth, have more gender inclusive and sensitive portrayals than the hardcore women's brands like Hog or whatever, the perfumes and high-end cars, etc. and of course traditional brands like Saffola oil and other things. Thirdly, ads in fashion, lifestyle, sanitation categories are found to be more transformative. The film industry is also exploring many gender issues which were perhaps unthinkable a few years ago. Pink, Thappad, Article 15 are some examples that come to my mind. And there are so many more which are refreshingly different. Similarly, the OTT platforms are providing opportunities to showcase content that is diverse, challenging, and various. We have many stories of the back of the beyond, like Jamtara, and we have Maharani and other stories from Bihar and places which are never portrayed in the regular TV media. Digital media, on the other hand, is helping brands to address social issues through long format ads. So the change in technology has immensely helped in giving more space to gender issues and other kinds of, including other kinds of diversity as well. There are several factors which are responsible for these changes. The Nirbhaya case shook the conscience of the country, bringing in many changes in the law and also developing guidelines for reporting on gender issues. Similarly, the Me Too movement laid bare the sexism in the workplaces, and it pushed the organization to take measures to address it. Data on falling sex ratio and the decrease in the work participation of women have shown us that all is not well with what is happening to women in India. More importantly, the surge of social media brought all communication under the scanner of public review, response, and reaction, which has both the positive and a negative side. The Black Lives Matter movement and the upsurge on the social media made Unilever rebrand their fairness products. P&G has launched the We See Equal campaign, which is aiming to address inherent sexism and stereotypes in advertising and in organizations. Finally, the increase in the size of middle class and the education of women mean that they are emerging as important consumers and or influencers of decisions regarding consumption. It is interesting to note that our analysis of ads shows that brands catering to the modern women such as Biba, Tanishq, Titan, Anouk are the ones which have been in the forefront of gender transformative ads. Ariel ads have been addressing the issue of gendering process in the family and the need to start the change at home. The most transformative ad in the recent times is the Bhima jewelry ad, which celebrates the identity of a trans woman, her acceptance by the family, and her wedding. We have also seen projection of single women parents, gay and lesbian relationships and couples, and persons with disability in advertisements. Would the change continue? I think it should, because firstly, diversity and inclusion make business sense to the corporates, increasing the consumer base and profits. Secondly, the ad agencies are driven by the young generation which desires change, and the social media continues to play a big role, amplifying the voices of women and the marginalized sections. Even the government sees the need to placate the demands of diverse groups to sustain their power and to promote the image of India as a progressive country in the world. However, we need to keep working to ensure that the momentum builds up and change happens in the direction that we want. We need to keep working together, sustain partnerships, and build synergies to bring a world which makes every woman and every girl a cherished girl. a ladli. Thank you so much.
Dr. Sharda, thank you so much for sharing with us that the needle is slowly moving and it's always difficult to challenge stereotypes, but the advertising and marketing industry in its own little ways is doing the needful. May I invite Ms. Neena Das Gupta, IAA Mancom member, CEO and Director, Zirka Digital Solutions Private Limited, to join us on stage and felicitate Dr. Sharda. Okay, can we request Nandini ma'am to felicitate Dr. Sharda by presenting her a small memento, a small token of our gratitude and appreciation. Thank you. Advertising, marketing, and communication go hand in hand, and we have with us Mrs. Charulata Ravi Kumar, Managing Director, Accenture, columnist, educationist, and somebody who's always curious. In her 28 plus years of experience in global MNCs, she has held leadership roles across Asia, Middle East, and Europe. At Accenture, she has partnered leading global clients to drive their growth, transformation, and innovation vision across markets while keenly sponsoring various initiatives that drive inclusion and diversity. She's extremely passionate about education, and today she joins us on stage to talk to us about responsible communication. Can we please welcome her with a warm round of applause?
Thank you so much. I did put some slides together. Yeah, that's up. Sorry if there are any typos. I was going to come here and give an extempo, and then, a couple of hours back, I said, no, there's no fun without some images. I think you're going to enjoy it a little bit more. Responsible communication, right? I know I heard some of the statistics and all of that, and I know we've come a long way in terms of content on OTT, in terms of advertising, and the entire communication industry, marketing industry has really taken this objective and this, as a purpose very strongly to their heart and forward. But I still do believe there's a long way to go. Reason being, I think the world is changing at a pace which is much faster than the industry is keeping pace with it, right? And I'll come to what I mean by that. So for the new world of empowered diversity, I believe we need to rethink the way doing things. When I was young, and I started in my advertising days many, many years ago, decades ago, I think I was a rebellious child, but I don't think I was rebellious because I wanted to work towards this diversity, and all of these big things at that time weren't put into our heads. Nobody guided us. Nobody told us that this was important. This was important as an agenda to really drive, right? It was just somewhere inside you saying, why am I being told I can't do it? Why am I being told I can't drive at night? Why am I being told I'm a girl so I can't do this or I can't do that? I was fortunate, my parents, and I come from a family which was definitely more broader in their thinking in those times, and they evolved with times because there was a bit of a generation gap with me. So I turned out to be lucky that way. But then I looked around me and said, hey, I got lucky because I had support from family. I don't think so many other girls, young girls and women, even today, there is struggle around lots of girls and women who are coming from the inner parts of India to work in bigger cities, right? And they are bound by many things which they can't break away from. And I think the role of the industry is very important in helping break those shackles for the society they live in, helping everyone to understand the aspirations of young people. So I'm going to move forward, and I hope I'm doing this right, yeah. So, the representation of Indian women has been, of course, a drastic evolution has happened. But I still think there is objectification, and we went through some of the slides in terms of the UNICEF study as well. They are seen in some areas as being weak. I'm not going to take too many examples. They will come to your mind as I speak through. Unable to fight injustice on their own, right? And even in today's times, there are ads, right? For example, and this may come to your mind, there is a young kid thinking about becoming stronger as I grow up so that I can help my mother, right? She's going through a bit of a difficult time in her domestic life. But the woman is shown as not being able to do this and address this on her own, right? And the child is thinking about growing up and doing this. So dependent on men, used as a source of comic relief, right? Many of these areas still exist, maybe subtle, but those subtle, unconscious biases for children growing up, and I have a 17-year-old, when he's watching and he picks up on those little signals, it matters, right? So we have to be very watchful of those as well. In recent times, yes, we've had some content, movies that have addressed this and have come out. Some of these are some really good, strong movies that I've liked myself a lot. And they're not women who are defined by men or anything else in their lives. They've carved their own path in their journey. And those were very encouraging. But are we able to really change rigid mindsets because of that? The larger communities around us, right? What are these rigid mindsets? Let's look at some of them. Creating narratives that turn the rigid norms on their heads. Are we able to create those stories, right? Not creating them because, and that's the conundrum, right? For marketing, it has to be tagged to sales. When the KPIs of marketing initiatives go beyond looking at how much have I sold, that is when truly we'll be able to look at it and say, this change has to be brought about. I am a change maker and I have to do it. Are we ready to bring those change makers into our teams? Are we ready to bring people who say, is there a panel, for example, in the organizations that is reviewing the content and saying, no, this is socially incorrect. We can't let this pass. Or are we ticking those boxes saying, perfect, this is how women are in society and this is how men are in society. This ad will perfectly well resonate with them. Let's go with it. More will sell. So are we ready to challenge, right? How can we be more inclusive? So here it is, right? How do we empower women to challenge the stereotypical norms and roles assigned to them and to be represented in all aspects of society, right? Does it mean that we can be bold enough to say, let's bring in women into the script writing, the script assessment. Let's ensure there's a panel that looks at it and says, are we driving the age-old norm, the negativity further into society? Can we be bold enough to include scriptwriters into the panel, right? Who can assess that? Let's look at the change maker piece. So how can we be those change makers? Creativity, awards, sales, they should not override the need for enabling a new world, but they will. And that's hard to get away from, right? If those don't exist, business doesn't exist, the economy doesn't exist in many ways, right? However, the unconscious biases that we still create in our communication can stop. One of the interesting things when you were sharing data around content on OTT platforms, and it did say that there's a lot of positive representation of women. Even today, when I watch television content, I do a lot of that with my mom and people at home. So I look at all the Hindi and Tamil and Telugu and all the content possible. I know a lot of these languages. You'll see these subtle differences, or actually stark differences exist even today. The wicked woman who is playing games still exists. There is content, there are serials that continue on that path. Do they have diminishing viewership? I believe so. That's what the number indicates. But the fact that it still exists, so we haven't gotten out of it, right? If you look at another piece, interesting difference I have noticed is the good woman is simply dressed. The bad woman has makeup and is glamorously dressed. I mean, look at those stereotypes that we have in our minds and we play out there. What does that mean? That families will also look at the women in their homes and say, hey, you know what? No, I think the perception if you go out like this is going to be this. Don't do it. Don't wear the makeup. Don't wear this. Don't do that. And those are still fueled by the content I see on OTT and television channels, right? And these must be filtered. We must filter these and say, let's bring in a little bit of sensitivity, a lot of sensitivity to how this content is portrayed. And industry critiques and governing bodies. Sorry, I just want to go back, but it doesn't matter. I think what we need to do is come together as content creators, marketers, industry critiques, industry bodies, governing bodies, right? And play this role of ensuring that every piece of content goes through that acid test, right? Many of it will not even pass. But yes, the change is needed, and therefore we must ensure that happens. Right? So let's fight the overt and the subconscious bias. What are these? Some of them, images of women often focus on conventional beauty standards. I think we went through the statistics. I'm not going to go through numbers right now. And outdated gender roles. We saw that. But of course, like ma'am mentioned as well, the share the load, Dove itself, and many of the brands have really taken a much higher ground, recognizing that they need to listen to the voice of change. brands have been listening to the voice of change, right? It is very heartening to see brands really take that stance and continue on that path. And I remember when these breakthrough campaigns or completely, culture-shattering campaigns first released, there was so much discussion around won't work, people will not accept it, it will be rejected, all of that. It worked. It worked. And the same conversation is going on around the cricket as well, right? IPL women's teams, will it work? Will it get the viewership? Will sponsors come forward because it's, don't know how many people. I am very positive. I was having this debate with somebody who was also aligned with me, in fact, and we were very positive that this is going to get very strong viewership. And it's already beginning to show the results, right? It's so damaging to both men and women as it reinforces these negative stereotypes. And people, when they watch it, take this back into their homes. Subconsciously, the actions and decisions we make at home and how we treat each other also get decided by that very subconsciously. And it's creating a society of very low self-esteem and body image issues for a lot of people, right? Creating a more diverse range of female characters in their productions, very important. Right? The production units, the story writers, how can they bring in more diversity in the kind of women they portray, okay? And casting more female leads and characters with varied backgrounds and experiences, so that we don't get to see the same actors, same actresses, same kinds of people, so predictable, right? From one serial to the other as it moves, sometimes I can't even tell it's moved to a new series. It almost seems like the extension of the same thing because storyline doesn't change. And using more non-traditional roles as well. Yeah. So another area that I think I would really urge everyone here, and whoever will be listening to this in terms of the industry body, the marketers, people who hold the torch, right, for showing the way for the rest of the world. How do we sensitize all stakeholders? How do we bring that to action by creating much more awareness of the purpose of the communication, right? And the creative briefs that are written for the communication, whether it's content or advertising, I mean, I haven't seen too much change in the briefs that come through, right? They're still kind of delivered around sales, delivered around brand equity, no one has included social change in that briefing format. How can my brand bring about social change through this campaign? How will this content bring about social change through this campaign, right? And let's put the content through the test. Let's create something and say, how do consumers react to it? Let's open it up for discussion with end consumers saying, what do you think, right? What do you pick up? What signals are you picking up from here? Is there a panel that evaluates from a social impact point of view? Do all stakeholders, creators, producers, media partners, are they aware of the need to bring change here, right? And this is what I really wanted to close with, is one of the biggest, I think, damaging approach that we have taken and we continue to take is insights, right? It's always insights-based creation. And to me, herein lies the danger, and I'll explain. Insights are important. Insights are very important. But insights tell you the way the behavior is today. Insights tell you how society, communities, how men, women, etc. are behaving, or how they perceive the world or themselves. And based on those insights, so maybe fear is a certain insight of how I look, right? And if that's a fear, that becomes an insight in the way we translate that into content. So we aren't changing anything. We're just playing on a deep-rooted insight of fear and cultivating it further, right? Insight is not the way to go. If we really want change through our content, through our communication, it needs to be based on the need for the change. And yes, that insight is important. Let's change the root of what's causing that fear and that insight. Maybe that's the way to go about it and say, let's not hide behind these insights, right? Can content that actively body shames, some Bollywood movies depict women as objects of male desire, gender-based stereotypes such as ads that portray women as primarily responsible for household chores. We went through some of the data in that. Content that glorifies violence against women. A lot of the movies that have become mega hits, right? When I watched one of them, it was such a mega hit, and I watched it, I was appalled. I couldn't watch it for more than 15 minutes. I was so appalled, right? At almost every 5 minutes of the movie, there was something that was demeaning towards women, right? I don't know how in today's society asking for a kiss and being paid for it can be seen as respectful. Content that glorifies customs and rituals that have kept women suppressed and subservient, right? And we still have those. We still see in those ads where women are keeping quiet, and there's a need for change, we see that. And let communication play that big role and come forward. Maybe, you know, one of the other things that I was thinking about as I looked at all the data is, can we be bold? Can we really be very bold enough to clean up this whole thing in a big way, right? We are the stakeholders sitting out here. We are the stakeholders, the marketing, communications, content creators, industry, media. Can we say no? Can we say no to putting our ads against content which does not give it the due respect that gender diversity needs? Can we say no to being part of a campaign, right? Can we have the power to say, no, I do not want to be part of this campaign, or I do not want this to be put up in this, against these, this content in OTT or television. If we took a strong stance, if marketers took a strong stance like that, the whole community, industry body, governing body, everybody will have to come together and work towards it. So maybe there is a really big need, not at an individual level of just brands making it happen in communication, but really the entire ecosystem, all stakeholders coming together and saying, no, no, here on, we are going to be more responsible and create that responsible communication and place it responsibly as well. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much. I'm really happy that this is main stage, and thank you so much. I think this topic, the fact that we are bringing this topic in a public forum and willing to act on it is a big, big step forward. Big changes have happened, and I'm sure with something like this coming together, more people hearing our thoughts around it, hearing our voice, know that the voice of change is out there and it's loud, and bringing about the change is really a very, very powerful thing. Thank you so much for making this happen. Ramesh, thank you so much for inviting me to this. Really happy to hear the other speakers. It has been very inspiring.
I'll just take the podium. Thank you, ma'am, for an awe-inspiring sharing of thoughts here. We have one question. Would it be okay to take one?
Of course, sure.
So I believe Nandini ma'am has a question, and if we can hand over a mic.
Hi, that was
Hello,
wonderful.
Nandini.
Hi, that was wonderful to listen. You know, marketeers, and because a lot of us are in advertising and marketing, and that's the background we come from, there is a genuine, question that comes in our mind that when you target a product, it is made for a larger set of people, and that is usually filled with prototypes, right? And then when we are advertising or when we are creating content, the question is, don't keep to that prototype, because then you're creating biases, right? Yeah. So it's a conundrum, and we struggle to see, should we just make now 10 products which fit to different prototypes, which makes a brand weaker, or should you do it? What would you advise?
During the days when we did not have digital marketing, right, I think it was a bigger challenge. You really had to build the brand through emotional strings that you had to create, right? And therein, I think, was the bigger challenge, because then you had to use those insights, those stereotypes, those prototypes that we had in society, and this is how they behave. Let's tug at their hearts and relate to their problems and plight, right? But if you look at it now, and digital is in everybody's hands, it's everywhere, it's in everyone's hands, in the remotest parts as well, right? It's easy to reach anybody, even through a simple SMS, which means you don't have to necessarily build those strong, and today, loyalties are also at stake, right? Because people have so much of option. I know I can get online and I can buy this or that, or, I don't have to, you can't fool me with just emotions anymore. Your product really has to work. So I think, two things. One is if we can look at a set of people, the prototype, right, the consumer segment we're looking at, there could be multiple insights. We tend to pick the insight which is, Yeah, which is wider audience, but it's also rona dhona, thoda tug at their hearts, and they will feel emotional about this whole thing. But there could be other power spot areas for the same cohort, right? The same cohort could be inspired by another way of telling the same story. Have we tried it? And in digital media, it's so easy now. Try AB. You can test it for yourself, right? It's so easy. You can pull out those ads which don't work. And you can pull out those ads which are getting negative comments. And today on social media, when you put out something like this, the number of negative sentiment that comes up within seconds is very high. You will know. So test it out is what I would say. Don't ignore it. Test it out and see what your audience wants. Maybe they want the change as well. They want the change too, right? So that's one that I would say. I think the second thing is, I would also look at, brands should not just think about brand building based on, like I said, right, insights alone. I think there's a lot more. The industry has to come together to make the change. And you could parallelly, many of the brands have done it. There are brand campaigns which talk about the product and the benefits of the product. And then there are larger social change campaigns as well. So maybe you need to focus on both. Obviously how much you scale that and how you get all the communities into that fold will be really important. Not an easy one, but it's a commitment that needs to be made. It's not easy, but it's a commitment, for sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Charulata, for an extremely awe-inspiring presentation and speech. Thank you, ma'am. Please stay back for a second. May I invite Ms. Megha Tata, Co-Chairperson, IAA Women Empowerment Committee and CEO Cosmos Maya, to felicitate Mrs. Charulata, please. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Mrs. Charulata. Thank you. Thank you. Let's take this event forward, ladies and gentlemen. We are joined today by someone who has played a decisive role in scripting the future growth story of the kids category in India with Nickelodeon and driving the leadership agenda of the Hindi mass entertainment broadcast category with the Colors franchisee. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Neena Jaipuria, Chairperson, IAA Women Empowerment Committee and Head, Hindi Mass Entertainment and Kids TV Network, Viacom Media Private Limited, as I invite her to deliver the welcome address.
Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today and making time for this very, very special event. Thank you, Honorable Government Ma'am. We are very, very grateful to have you here today. And hugely, it's a very proud moment, and we're so happy to have you here today with us. Thank you so much for joining us. On that note, today's been a special day because it's a very special summit for us at IAA. The IAA Voice of Change Gender Portrayal from 30 seconds to 3 hours started off in Mumbai last year. And after a very successful summit and a series of roundtables and roadshows across leading agencies in Mumbai and Delhi, we are very, very happy to bring this conversation and this movement and voice of change to Hyderabad. It all started in a very pioneering initiative at IAA where we decided to take it upon ourselves as a mission to emphasize on fair gender portrayal across media in advertising, communication, and content, be it a 30-second ad or a 3-hour movie. It was then that we partnered with UNICEF, our knowledge partners, and we conducted a research with Gina Davis Institute. And the facts that came out of that study were fairly disturbing, as you saw Gitanjali present some of that. They were very rampant gender stereotyping, discrimination, disproportionate gender portrayal. And that is when I decided that as a prominent industry body, we need to take this learning, this information out into the public eye under the banner of Voice of Change. And so IAA Voice of Change really is, plays a critical role not just in informing and create awareness, but it's also about trying to empower the workings of the creative minds, the content creators, the brand custodians, and of course, students that I see here today at the back as well. So Voice of Change really harkens the need for a more sensitized, for a more inclusive narrative in the content that we put out here. And today I can see all of us here are the powerhouses behind the creation and marketing of that content. You know, over the years we've noticed that content consumption has become rampant. It's available more than ever. The consumer has a whole lot of choice, and access to content is even that much more. All demographics, whether it's kids, families, youth, seniors, everybody is consuming some form of content, whether it's short form, long form, bite-sized. We're consuming it on TV sets, on our mobile phones, on OTT, online, social media. And we truly believe that what we are consuming is actually influencing our thoughts, our behaviors, our beliefs, and in a way, shaping the society. And it is thus extremely important for us to now understand and take a step forward to decide what is the content that we really want to put out there. And I hope today that in all the research insights that you've seen, plus all the discussions and all the panel discussions that we have up ahead and the keynote address by Madam Honorable Governor, I hope that we are all inspired to actually start at our own levels. I hope that we are inspired to take part in breaking the prevalent biases at a personal level as well. And I hope that today, after exploring so much of the skewed gender portrayal, we are able to together raise a voice to bring forth a more inclusive narrative in our content and hopefully, therefore, create a very positive impact in our society. Of course, over a period of time, nothing is going to happen tomorrow. But we were so happy to hear a whole lot of people ahead of us who's talked about the transformation has started, but there is a lot to do, and there's a lot to do before we go to sleep. So I really suggest that today is a day where we all take back, we look back, we inspire not just ourselves, but our organizations, the people we influence, to start to take notice of what we are putting out there as content, and hopefully we'll bring forth a more inclusive narrative that will eventually have a very positive impact on our society. So together, let's continue to move the needle and break the bias together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Neena Jaipuria, for sharing with us about the opportunities that lie here that we can unfold and unravel as the day and event progresses along. Moving ahead, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Mr. Avinash Pandey, Chief Executive Officer, ABP Network Private Limited. He has over 26 years of experience in the media sector. His illustrious professional career includes stints with Indian Express Group and TV Today Group. He's also been at the forefront of promoting Indian regional languages, especially on digital mediums. He's on the board of News Broadcasters Association of India, ABB Creations Private Limited, and Indian chapter of International Advertising Association. A true industry specialist. Please join me in welcoming him on stage as I request him to share a few words with all of us. Can we please welcome him with a warm round of applause?
Honorable Governor Dr. Tamilisai, thank you very much for coming today despite your busy schedule today. Distinguished guest, eminent panelist, and my friends from IAA and advertising community. For years, the advertising industry, which is well known for its ability to deliver short and effective messages, and the entertainment and the media industry, which I belong to, is legendary for its abilities to tell stories and hold attention of its audience for a longer duration, from either 30 seconds to 3 minutes, 3 hours as it is said. I've had fingers pointed at them for gender stereotyping in case of gender spaces. One of the speakers spoke about media industry, how we report about women issues now. And I remember in my career when we were reporting about Arushi Talwar's murder case, and how the same reporters are today reporting about the latest episode that happened on 31st of night in the NCR. A lot of sensitivity has been raised by our community of audience, and it has improved the way we write today's script and report. It is such a big issue that is why we decided to address this on head-on and called it 30 seconds to 3 hours. At the India chapter of International Advertising Association, we made up our mind to be loud and articulate voice for change. Friends, let's work together and break this gender bias that exists in our minds even today. Collectively, as content creators and communicators, we can be much needed voice of change ourselves. Our chairperson of this prominent committee at the IAA, Neena Jaipuria, who just spoke, will no doubt has taken this step, and through IAA, this particular initiative to a great extent. These are the baby steps we have taken, but we are committed that all through this year, you will see a lot of such dialogues, discussions, and research paper being presented in front of you. We are not only committed to take this effort in India alone, but to take it globally. IAA as an industry body represents advertisers, advertising agencies, and media, and has been at the forefront, ma'am, of several meaningful causes. We have championed the cause of sustainability for 13 years with our Olive Crown Award. We have used creativity as a force for good to raise funds for natural disasters, against voter apathy, and against domestic violence. We'll ensure that this too is not just a couple of sporadic events, but an actual change, an actual movement that you'll see in coming time. Thank you very much, ma'am, for coming here today, and thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Avinash Pandey. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to have with us our Honorable Governor, but before I invite her on stage, allow me a few moments to share a little bit about her. In fact, she's someone who's time and again initiated and acted by breaking stereotypes. She's the first woman governor of Telangana. She has a remarkable public and social service background spanning over 20 years. She also has an illustrious political career in the last 2 decades, where she has successfully led the state unit of a political party with noteworthy accomplishments. She started her career as a medical practitioner and is now currently the governor of Telangana and the lieutenant governor of Puducherry. She's also the proud recipient of the international award titled International Rising Star of the Year 2018 by Multi-Ethnic Advisory Task Force USA under US Congressman Danny K. Davis for her services to the society, especially in the field of politics, public, and medical services. Words would fall short, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in welcoming on stage our Honorable Governor as I request her to share her thoughts with all of us. Can we please welcome her with a warm round of applause?
Dr. A.L. Sharada, Director, Population First, Mrs. Charulata Ravikumar, Shikal Goyal, she has come. Okay. And Nandini Reddy, Mrs. Nandini Reddy, Dr. Pranadi Reddy, then who is available? I should not mention who is not available, that's why I'm searching, because they gave a big list. And Ms. Manasa Varanasi, Ms. Swepna, and Ms. Megha, Mr. Avinash Pandey, President, IAA, and Mr. Srinivasan Swami, Chairman. Best wishes to you all. And I'm really very happy that the Sakshi TV, the Showboat, and the Freedom Healthy Cooking Oils, UNICEF, all taking a very valid subject of breaking the barrier and gender bias. Let's break the bias together. So let us share the dais together to break the bias together. And because you are all, most of you are all from the media, and you know why from 3 seconds to 3 minutes. So 30 seconds to 30 minutes, not that. Every second to every minute or every hour, there is gender bias. So if we ask some of the advertisers or the media personnel or film producers, why are you showing the women in a stereotypical manner? And why are you viewing there in only the sexist manner? Then they told, no, the community expects that, community is expecting that, so what we can project only what the community expects. So there should be a mindset. I always feel, because here some of the, some short speech about some of the presenters, just when I entered I heard. And social media, immediately if some women are projected in a biased manner, immediately there will be condemnation in social media. But condemnation in social media is there, but not in social platform. So it's very hard to accept it. For example, I can say, when I was, in a lighter sense I can mention this, when I became the governor, I went to Coimbatore and I was waiting to board the flight. Everyone was wishing me. So one of girl, she had some 8 years old girl, she asked her mother, Amma, why everyone is wishing her? Her mother told, she is our governor. So everyone, Mama, don't bluff. Then her mother told, no, she is our governor. Don't bluff, ma. Only old man can be governor. How can she become the governor? So this is the mindset of a child. So only in advertisements also, I was feeling happy, because as it is said, when I was reading about the biased advertised agents also, even during the Women's Day, one of the online advertisement came for, to mark the Women's Day. We are giving the utensils, cooking utensils, in such a low cost. So immediately there was, so women means utensils or sari or bangles, not about that. Not a signing pen, not a rider. Nowadays women are even pilots. When I was talking with our Honorable Aviation Minister, he was telling, now women pilots outnumber in our country than any other country, but they are not shown. They are only air hostess they will be showing, serving persons they will be showing. And that's not inferior, I am telling, because, but they are not looking above that. But once I was seeing with a remote, because we don't have much time of for watching everything. When I was having a remote, I saw one of the lady police official, madam is here. She was a traffic constable. So I thought, okay, the society has changed. Because she has been shown not only as a cook, as an assistant, as a server, but she has been shown as a traffic constable. But immediately my hope fell down, because she, when in the traffic, she was seeing a person with a banyan of that brand. So she became affinity towards him, because she was moved by that banyan. So even though I was very happy that they were showing a person with, but immediately that thought thrashed, because for that only they were asking women to stand there as a traffic constable, not because of she deserves or this. So immediately, whatever may be, even for men underwear, only women should advertise. That is the irony of that. So that should be a change of mindset. And I always feel, because even I was a house surgeon. When I was a house surgeon at Tanjavur Medical College, a lady gave birth to 2 children, twins. One was male and one was female. Both were weighing 2.5 kg. And when twins needs regular monitoring, so when we wanted the patient to report regularly every month, the first month, the girl child was losing her weight and the male child was gaining his weight. Then we did all the investigations, but everything was under normal limits. Then we asked her, Madam, what are you having adequate breast milk to feed these 2 children? The answer she told, really I was shocked, we were all shocked. She told, I am providing the feeding with the breast milk to my male child, and I am giving the female child the cow's milk, diluted cow's milk. So from the birth, as a sonologist I know, as a practicing sonologist I know, because thanks to the Indian law that have banned the disclosing of the sex. Otherwise, even during when ultrasound machine was introduced, they won't tell it as under ultrasound machine. ஆம்பளையா பொம்பளையா பார்க்குற மிஷினுக்கு போகிறேன், like that they will tell. So they will tell, then they will immediately tell which is the sex. And before, when the sex were disclosed, the right, we are talking about the right of the babies born and right of the women are alive. Then we didn't have the children, girl children even didn't have the right to be born. They were all, because of the strict law, now it's wrong to disclose, it's wrong to disclose the sex of the baby. Before, the children were aborted because they were girl children. So, starting from the mindset and from the social outlook, and even now, because as a chancellor, when I had a vice chancellor meeting, I asked the vice chancellors. They told very happily, no, women students outnumber now. And then I asked, what is the branch they are selecting? What is the group they are selecting? They are not selecting the more research activities, more intensified groups. They are not selecting. They are selecting arts groups so that they can tell in their marriage market. So I'm MA, BA, to that level only. Even families want them to do that only. So there should be a different mindset. And because in a lame excuse, they are all telling, advertisers and others telling, no, society wants what we are projecting other than the society. So there should be a change in mindset. And apart from that, whatever may be the brand, when women are focused, they think, and another thing about the zero size, slim, so they're obsessed towards that. So it is, women are shown in that shape. If they are not in that shape, then if they are fat, they are haters for that fatters. So these all things we have to, there should be change in mindset. But I am very happy that this platform is discussing such things. Because these all things we will be talking about that, then we will forget. But the media personnel and the advertising personnel have come together, and we wanted to break the bias against the women. It's really a welcome move. And whatever may be the support from me, I always feel, because I always say, even in politics or any other branch, we have to work more. If a woman should more 10 times than a man to be recognized. So that is the reality. They cannot accept that even in promotion, if they are 10 years, the same qualification. No, we have to toil very hard. When we are all, when madam and others are, we are standing here, really, it is not easy. So that mindset, that opportunities, that recognition should be there. And whenever such things are projected, we should boycott also. Reject it. We are not doing it. Okay, then we have a tendency, okay, next time we will see. Obliging it. So please, be assertive. Reject it. Then only you will be received in a very prestigious manner. So I am really very happy. You are all stalwarts in their own branches. So you have all come here. And I am rushing to catch my flight because I am going to Puducherry, as I am holding the other charge also. In a lighter sense, that also I always used to say. Because when I was posted as the governor of Telangana, everyone, I am the youngest governor. Then they told, boy, what she is going to do about this young state, newborn state. I told, I am a gynecologist, so I can handle a newborn baby. And then after some time, I was given a additional charge. The same critics came forward and said, okay, she managed one state. How she is going to manage another state? I told, I am a gynecologist. If singleton is born also, I can manage. If twins also born also, I can manage. Because I am a gynecologist. So gynecologists have pride. As a woman, we always manage things. But we have to manage these atrocities also. So we all should come forward. And another thing, because the poor advertising, the girls who are involved in advertisements, and they are all exploited. So we have to give an iron hand to them, protect them. At the same time, there should be some change in the mindset of the society also, not only in the social media, in the social platform also. So I'm really happy to attend this. And even it's a small mark which we can mark on this change in the gender bias, I'll be very happy. Thank you so much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with our first panel discussion for the day. Allow us just a couple of minutes while we set the stage for the same, and then we will move ahead with our first panel discussion titled Gender Conscious and Purposeful Entertainment. Please stay with us. We'd highly appreciate your patience here. May I invite on stage our moderator for the session, Ms. Swapna, a senior journalist with a career spanning 20 years with some of the top channels, someone who has worked closely with radio for 10 years and has worked across various verticals, politics, social, and cinema. She's also the CEO of iDream Digital. She's also the moderator for this panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please welcome her with a warm round of applause? Thank you, Swapna. Please take a seat. In the same line of thought, I'd like to invite on stage our first panelist, Srimati Shikha Goyal, IPS Additional DGP, Women's Safety, She Teams in Bharosa, Hyderabad. She is the winner of the President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service as well as the President's Medal for Meritorious Service. She shares an active interest in social causes, including women and child-related issues. She's also credited for managing one of the largest teams of women police officers in the country, empowering them and then deploying them in core policing activities rather than being used in non-field support activities. Can we please welcome her with a huge round of applause? Our next panelist, Ms. Nandini Reddy, film director and screenwriter. She's known as a female director who stands her ground in the kind of cinema she makes in a male-dominated space. She brought in a refreshing real feel to the characters in her films, especially in a make-believe perfect real world where stereotypes were ruling the space. She's also the recipient of Nandi and Saima Awards. Up next, our panelist, Dr. Praniti Reddy, Director of Fetal Medicine, Rainbow Hospitals, with 35 years of clinical experience and was pivotal in guiding Women's Division of Rainbow from an excellent clinical facility to a successful publicly traded enterprise. She's extremely passionate about the birthing process and the impact it has on a woman's life journey, both professional and personal. She's a Rotarian and works actively on behalf of Sparsh Hospice, a center for palliative care. And Mr. Srinivas Avasarala, Indian actor, film director, screenwriter, and television presenter. He's a well-known director and screenwriter who has made a mark in the film industry with his unique acting style, recipient of Nandi and Saima Awards. And with that, I hand over the stage to our moderator, Ms. Swapna.
Thank you, Shilpa. In fact, I didn't need you to switch on the mic because I don't have the sweet, typical voice of a regular woman that we all show. So I have a bass, bold voice, and I sincerely apologize for that. And I also apologize for the fact that I'm 5'8" and not your normal, regular zero size. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you, and a warm welcome to all our panelists here, Shikha ma'am, Nandini, Pranati ma'am, and Srini. Thank you so much for being here. So we have been seeing a lot of insights here in the last couple of hours. But like we had a very compelling thought here today, it's not just the insight that matters, it is the need for change, and hence we are here to discuss what we can do. From 30 seconds to 3 hours, women are ignored, undermined, exploited, made into showpieces, and all I can say is, oh, she's a woman equal or better than a man. She could be a cop, but still she's a prop in the typical context, ma'am. She is forced to be a martyr, an angel, mostly dumb and dependent, less worthy, unimportant, and various other things. She is compelled to struggle for that perfect ideal body that they have decided. She is celebrated in parts when she flies super high, but then gets drowned in the various voices in her normal daily routine. So here we are being the voice of change, ladies and gentlemen. So I would like to start with our panelists. Shikha ma'am, so I would like to inevitably start with you because you deal with these issues day in and day out. So what do you think, ma'am, is the real woman like? According to you, what do you think is a real woman like?
Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to thank Voice of Change and Sakshi for inviting me here. Well, a real woman is just like all of us sitting here. So I don't see there is any other definition to it. Is a real woman who we see at our home, a woman who we see at our offices, a woman just like our governor who was just here, or as she was talking about a pilot or a doctor. So that's what a real woman is, what all of us are.
Thank you, ma'am. That's a good beginning. So let's get straight into the topic. So Nandini, we are here talking about entertainment and gender conscious entertainment and purposeful entertainment. Is it possible to actually define gender conscious and purposeful specifically?
When we say purposeful entertainment, you're putting one whole, suitcase of responsibility on people who are creative and making something. Who are they making it for? Why are they making for? And who defines that purpose becomes the question. I've always believed that speaking for cinema or anything that comes out in the visual media content has always and largely reflected what is going on in society. That being said, cinema today, although its impact is very high, over the last few years, if you see, lot of content that comes out on social media in forms of reels or in forms of social media influences, that's a different entity by itself, and that's coming very organically. Nobody's controlling it, nobody's censoring it, nobody's telling them what they should or shouldn't do. It is coming from the organism of society. Whatever it is coming there. And so yes, we are reflecting each other back and forth. So can there be a responsibility? Can we be a more responsible society? I'll throw the question right back. So the cinema is as responsible as society is. We can say as much as we want in society and then go home and behave as we want with wives and daughters and go back to square one and nobody would even blink. So much of it has been normalized that we don't even realize it till somebody else points it out.
So true. But then like they say, we have a line in Telugu, చూస్తున్నారు కాబట్టి తీస్తున్నాం, తీస్తున్నారు కాబట్టి చూస్తున్నాం. देख रहे बोल के निकाल रहे बोल के देख रहे. So where do we draw the line? So Nandini, that was a good beginning. So Srini, I'll move to you because we are actually getting into cinema first. So in the typical context of our Indian Telugu cinema or Indian cinema or any other entertainment, what do you think is the typical role of a woman by and large? You've been a screenwriter, you have seen cinema, you've been in cinema.
It's difficult to define that because things are changing. Because I grew up in the 90s and there was a very successful genre back then. An arrogant girl being taught humility by her husband. And that film became like a big hit. Then the next one actually overdid that. The husband teaches a lesson to the girl and her sister and the mother. So from that point, we have come a long way. Partly the reason is because now the filmmakers have a lot of access to what people are talking about their films. Like Charlatama mentioned, that scene where, the guy asks the girl for a kiss and he offers to pay is disrespectful. And then I went and looked at all the reviews that spoke about that film and nobody mentioned it. And 10 years ago, people wouldn't have, let it go. People would have talked about it. But now nobody spoke about it because all the arguments that were there like 10 years ago kind of petered out. None of them withstood. The reason being because they called out filmmakers for wrong things, like say equal pay. Right. I think that's not a very good measure of gender equality in films because I'm sure there are many male actors who wouldn't be getting paid as much as an Anushka does or a Samantha does. And if you go to the union level, everybody gets paid the same thing. So somewhere I think the battle was misdirected. But if we keep speaking more about it, like when I'm going to take 1 minute here. Yeah. Like when I first wrote a script, I narrated it to a female friend of mine and she asked me if it passes the Bechdel test. I asked her what the Bechdel test is and she said there are 3 conditions for the Bechdel test. One is to have at least 2 female characters with a name in your film. And most films do pass that. And the second one is there at least one scene where these women have a conversation? Okay, most films do pass that. But I was shocked to realize that, the third condition, most films failed, which is this conversation about something other than a man? Then I went back and looked at about 10 or 15 films that were like big hits that year. And I was appalled to know that, none of them passed the Bechdel test. So I think if the feedback becomes healthier and stronger, and the representation of women in media will change, and if you truly explore women characters like any other male character, I think you would have a much more three-dimensional film. It actually helps the film rather than hurt it. So that's where I think we are headed.
Well, yeah, that speaks a lot. So, Dr. Pranati, from a media perspective, we talk about two kinds of women. One, the very abused, raped, probably beaten, or somebody who has been exploited severely and who has actually inevitably fought her way up or emerged out somehow, survived it. Or we talk about our superheroes, somebody who does something extraordinary, like, they fly in space, or they're the first woman to, walk upside down, or something like that. But when it comes to the context of a normal, regular woman, we are not able to have a dialogue of any sort. Do you have a perspective on this?
As far as media goes, we've been talking about it through, this whole session, and I think they've presented very good research evidence also. So the portrayal of women, it may be on either extremes, like you're saying, somebody who's absolutely abused, and then you have a set of people who are highly successful. But overall, when you look at a portrayal of a woman in the media, or, in advertising section, or in films, it's usually, depicted as somebody who's very slim, very fair-skinned. They are considered the attractive prototypes. And this comes across at all levels, And you've seen the research that was presented in the original presentation, which also said that most often women in the downtrodden category that you've spoken about, the first category that you've spoken about, hardly get any visibility in the media space, particularly in the advertising space. It's mostly the successful women who get that visibility. And as long as that inequality lies, in the way women are portrayed, it's very hard then to bring across other genres. And it's not just about how we portray women. I think it's also important, if I can take one step laterally and tell you, that it's not just about how we are going to portray women. It's also very important, I think, for media to take a responsible attitude about portraying a new man. It's very important. Men matter. I mean, we can't exclude them out of this discussion. They have to be an integral part of how they are portrayed. So if you start portraying men differently, where you don't show the macho men as the men who matter, but men who pay attention to women if they start mattering, and if you can make them heroes, I think then this whole discussion will become more meaningful. It has to be, unified in that terms.
Right. In some sense, Nandini, you have broken stereotypes through your cinema. I remember when I watched your first film, Ala Modalaindi, we spoke of fat arms. Yeah. Fat arms is something that nobody can digest, because we are all conditioned to, when I was growing up, it was 36, 24, 36. That was a perfect, supposed to be figure. Now it is 46, 46, 46, and that's perfectly fine. But Nandini, so when you actually have seen that kind of a character emerge successful from your films, what actually made you, when you go back, what made you come up with something like that?
It wasn't something that, when you're writing a story, you don't have this agenda that, okay, now I'm going to change this. You don't write from such a higher position. You are writing from an extension of yourself. Right. So it was a story, it was a character. I was looking to see, how can I make this character unique? It's your first film. You want it to stand apart from the current, crowd that is there. So I chose a space that feels more real, that feels more normal, feels more natural. I didn't see myself doing one typical kind of commercial Telugu film. I wrote what I thought would be funny, what I thought would be engaging, what I thought it would be real, and prayed as hell that that would work commercially. It just happened to work. So I think that was it. So I think it boils down to who you are and what your sensibilities have been. I mean, Srini writes some of the most sensitive female characters. Sometimes I wonder why he thought of something and why I didn't. you know, and we've had men like Mahesh Bhattji also write films like Arth. I mean, I think the stupendous women characters. So it comes down to the sensitivity. Shekhar Kamala, again, who writes such amazingly complex female characters. It boils down to what you are aware of as a person, what your sensibilities are growing up, what your belief system is, and then you bring that into your storytelling. So I feel if there are more women or more men who are sensitive, who are aware, who have a more nuanced way of telling stories and don't box themselves into certain things, more people like Srini, definitely I think change will be there. And the other thing is, I feel the OTT has opened up such a huge space for different kind of stories to be told.
But whatever different kinds of stories are told, the woman is, if she is successful, she is a mean bitchy.
No, I think in the OTT now things are changing because
I think the perception of a successful, normal woman has still not emerged strong enough is what most people feel. What do you say, Nandini?
it has not yet evolved. It is, what do if we having a conversation here in this air conditioning hall, let's go right down to the street and ask somebody. We'll get an answer quite the opposite. So, you know. So like I said, things are changing slowly but steady, but they are changing. It's been, what, 15 years since I've come to this industry. I didn't even know there were no women. You know, there were no toilets for women.
Right.
I had to run around some 2 blocks for even a toilet. When I went to visit my friend at Google, I said, damn, you have toilets for women. So, you know, it was from there to now, yes, now we have toilets. So things are changing slowly.
I'll quickly move to Shikha, ma'am. The scene from a very, very super hit recent film, ma'am, where the hero is actually an antisocial element. He's actually a smuggler. He goes to a girl and says, if you give me a kiss, I will give you 5,000 rupees. Imagine, ma'am, if your she teams did a raid like that, what would you do? What would be the punishment for a guy like that?
So let me go to the larger issue than answering what I would do to an ex-person. As the discussion is going on, I think it's more of an issue of equity in depiction rather than just about the screen time. It's what the portrayal is there. We all we've been stereotyping women since ages. And I remember the Doordarshan ad which was ki jo बीवी से सचमुच करे प्यार, वो prestige से कैसे करे इनकार. So, it was decided that she is going to be cooking. Or the ad about a famous mango drink promoted by a leading actress. So do you really need that kind of a sensuality to promote a mango drink? Coming to, you talking about just one incident, let me talk about something which is very serious and how the numerous crimes day in and day out which happen, which we see, where people just follow what is, they think, see, movies are real, they're not real world. But when you project them as a real thing, or when the audience believes that this is the real thing, that is where the problem arises. And for a young mind, it is very difficult to distinguish between the make-believe world and the real world. So, पिक्चर में अगर हंसी तो फंसी और लड़की की नाव में हाथ छुपी है, अगर हर पिक्चर में वो रहता है, so then that is what a young boy believes, and that is how you are having the stalking and the Eve teasing and everything going around, because that is why the children or they follow.
Right.
Or you look at the serious, I mean, we've heard about the Walker case. It was just, for a decade, a famous series of America watched by 3 million people, and we just thought it was a series of a forensic expert who's actually a serial killer until Walker happened and had a body slashed into many pieces. So it's a very, very powerful media, and we get influenced by it. What anybody, all of us, I would say, how to romance I learned from Bollywood. Haven't most of us. So it does influence you. So therefore, there lies the responsibility.
Right. Ma'am, can you please elaborate and give us a few live, real examples of people you would have seen, during some of your investigations and the kind of mindsets that are developing because of various influences? Because we have had many petty criminals confess that they picked it up from a certain movie or a certain ad or something. So please share your experience, ma'am.
Just like I just said about this Walker case, which was the Dexter Morgan thing, which he copied. I mean, it's a classic case. Or we have so many. I mean, in She Teams, every second child who comes who's actually been stalking or eve teasing or something is copying some XYZ person, which they have seen on screen, and then they think this is normal.
Right.
This is how a boy is supposed to behave. The issue is, where do we teach them? How do we teach them? Do they feel, okay, my actor has behaved like this on screen, so yes, this is the right way. And if he behaves like this, the girl agrees. So it took a very powerful movie and a beautiful movie to tell that no means no.
Right.
Otherwise, always it has been that no actually means yes. So there have been so many, I'd say day in and day out, you see these kind of things happening. From normal passing of lewd remarks on the street to serious offenses of obsessive love, which is not love in any way, but that obsessive love which leads to crime, are so much influenced by various kind of depictions on screen.
So actually it is a real issue. It's not just something that we are talking about. Srini, I'll come back again. I don't want to somehow let go of that example that came up so explicitly about why is it that our filmmakers and screenwriters do not think of this? Is it because A, they feel it will not impact the society? It will not impact the society negatively? Impact, yeah. Or is it because they can get away with it, or they're just not thinking? What do you think could be happening? Because they're not bad people. Filmmakers are all giving great entertainment. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. What I want to say is, like, what every filmmaker deeply wants is to be relevant. If it is so established that whatever they are going to show is not relevant anymore, then I think filmmakers will definitely change. And what are the markers for relevance? Earlier it was just what the market said, whatever sells is relevant and whatever doesn't sell is irrelevant. But nowadays, with so much being talked about, on social media platforms and all, filmmakers have access to what their audience is thinking. And if the audience's voice is strong enough, to say, these things are not going to work anymore, then I definitely see there's going to be change. Like I said, it's not like, there are some anti-social elements wanting to propagate some kind of mindset into people. No. Filmmakers also want to be relevant, and they also want to keep up with what the society is at this point. So if there comes a point where, the feedback is much more stronger and filmmaker knows, how his film is received in a positive way. Like when I read a critique of my work, I think of, the changes I would have made if I met this critique like much before I made the film. And if I like the film, I think, I got a lesson for free. So a filmmaker always wants to improve. So if the feedback is kind of, to the point, I think it will definitely make a great progress, is what I think.
Right. Dr. Pranati, more importantly, now we're talking about a wide range of issues here. Not showing the fairer sex or whatever we refer to them as. Gender bias in terms of the quantity and also in terms of the quality and the kind of mindsets we are showing. So what do you feel is happening as a result of this, with women themselves when they are, able to, when they are growing up and developing their own self-worth?
As a gynecologist, I deal exclusively with women. They are my patients. And there's absolutely no doubt that this portrayal of women, which happens, in the media, in the advertising sector, definitely, has changed the aspirations of how women want to be. And if they cannot be like that, if they can't be fair-skinned, if they can't be slim, there is a loss of sense of self-worth. There is a kind of, apology for their body being the way it is. They feel ashamed. And there is also, as a result of this, there is also an impact on their ability to actually grow. And as a doctor, I actually see the physical effects of this problem. So this quest for being slimmer, being fairer, has a lot of negative impact on health itself. This quest for, as a gynecologist, it's interesting because this quest for fair skin begins right at the stage of pregnancy. There is this pregnant woman who wants a child to be born fair, and there is this belief, especially here, that using saffron makes the child fairer. And so they actually ask me this question, how much saffron to use? Can we use saffron? And there is really no data on that. In fact, some isolated incidents and research has even proven that if you take more saffron, it can lead to complications like abruption, which is a serious complication where the placenta separates, and it can cause a problem to the baby and to the mother, which can be life-threatening. So imagine using this substance, which is unregulated. If you have to introduce a medication into the market, it has to go through so many levels of approval. And so this is this quest. It starts right from, the to-be-born baby to become fairer. And so they are willing to risk a lot of, unknown, unsubstantiated substances. As a, small aside, I tell people when they ask me this question, I tell them, use it like a food supplement, as an additive maybe in moderate amounts, which we normally do. And I also want to tell you, I tell the lady sitting in front of me, I also want to tell you that my mother, when she was pregnant, used saffron every single day of her pregnancy, and here I am. I mean, does it make a difference? So they're willing to ignore science in the quest for this, and that's really dangerous, and that's something that should be brought forward. Right. It's the same with regard to weight loss measures. People use all kinds of diets, fads which are not proven, which are not sustainable. So they go on this, up and down swing, and they use supplements, protein powders and creatine and supplements like that, which have unknown effects. And they are not even being prescribed by a doctor. They're being prescribed by a trainer in the gym. He just brings out this powder and he says, oh, you take it and then you'll become slimmer, you'll become more toned. And it's amazing that women are willing to go that extra step. If you ask them to actually take medications, I get so many questions. What are the side effects? What would happen? Here, very blindly, they're willing to follow that. And nobody has actually evaluated the impact of all this in terms of their negative growth. Has anyone actually looked at a woman who's on a diet or who's fasting? Right. What happens to her at her workplace? Is her attitude the same? Is she more irritable? Is it impacting her ability to grow? Is this seesaw of weight loss impacting her ability to actually give her very best to her professional or indeed personal growth? You don't need to grow professionally only. You need to grow personally also, isn't it? Does it make them more irritable? We actually have real life examples of this happening in, like I can tell you in my own hospital, we have a doctor who's amazing. She's one of the most popular doctors. And there was a period of time where we started getting a lot of negative reviews. And it was very surprising actually, at that point of time. And we had to look into it because she is like an amazing doctor who's always done very well. And we really made an effort to look into the depth of this. And we did find out that at that particular period of time, she was on a juice fast. I'm not sure whether that impacted, but the complaints were mostly about, her inability to address patients politely. And then we sat down and spoke to her. Right. So it has a lot of ramifications. And as a doctor, I'm concerned about how this is impacting the physical health. This quest towards, following media portrayals of women.
Right, just like Shikha ma'am just mentioned, of course, but it's a make-believe world. Cinema is a make-believe world. But somewhere we are not able to draw that line. Yeah. And we want to make entertainment purposeful also somewhere. So, Nandini, what do you think then where do you draw the line? I mean, we have a censor board, We have all set norms, and we have activists wearing really big bindis. Again, it's a very cliche, stereotypical representation. We have all these people talking about this, but yet and again, it makes no difference, or the change is really, really slow. What do you think?
The change is slow, Swapna. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I've always believed that if more women enter the industry, it will harbor some real change. And I think we've seen that in the last few years. Now we are seeing women producers to the fore. I'm working with one, as is Srini. And we know the approach, we know the sensitivity with which they select their subjects, how they are even curating the content, picking actors. When it comes to picking actors' clothes, I know the difference that it makes. Of course, I've not ever kind of ventured into that side of commercial cinema, but even then, between male producers and female producers itself, there is one difference. When I was first in the industry, I would say there were barely 1 or 2 women technicians on the set, literally, from a unit of 150.
Would they stare at you like you are from some other planet?
They thought I was a hairdresser. A lot of people thought I was either a hairdresser or a choreographer for a very long time. I mean, there was no concept of a female assistant director at that time. And of course, if you're 5'9.5" and short hair, you had to be a man. So I got thumped on my back several times. And then I was asked why I wasn't dressed more ladylike. I said, because I can't go running around in a sari on the sets. Sorry, but you have to deal with it. Or somebody said, why don't you wear a rubber band? I said, I'm so sorry I'm inconveniencing you so much. I mean, you know, it was bizarre for me because I came from JNU, and here I was in this Telugu film industry, and I first of all didn't know there were no women. It was like, you know, it suddenly dawned upon me and said, there are no women here. So it was quite a revelation to me itself. So slowly kind of got the hang of what was going on, but from then to now, I have my colleagues calling me up and saying, hey, do you have any girls? I need some girls on my team. They've actually realized how dedicated they are, how detailed they are, how hardworking they are. And one of my friends who's a very big female actor, she told me, after my film became a success, she said, remember, you'll have to always work twice as hard for half the success, for half the credit. Absolutely. So I absolutely believe that. And all the women that I've seen in the industry work as hard. They really work like, now if we don't give it our 200%, we're going to, not find our place, not find our footing. And it was the same for me, fighting with 4 other male assistant directors, and I'd stay in the same room with the men in some forest, without batting an eyelid. I mean, I didn't want to be treated different. I said, just give me an opportunity to do my work. I was first not given a job because they thought, what is a girl going to do here, because we work late nights. I said, why don't you ask me if I can commute or not? I will do it. So I had to literally bulldoze my way through that. So I feel if more women are there, sensitivity and attitude, approach, everything will come, and automatically it will flow into the creative process.
More women, or more women who agree that we have to break the bias?
I'm saying it will happen automatically, Swapna, because look at the number of women. You hardly have any percentage of women. I mean, say out of 10, if 2 men think like that, apply the same percentage at worst case scenario to women.
Yeah.
We don't have 10 women is what I'm saying.
But
you have 1 or 1.5, that's it.
I do agree that we have very few women technicians like
Right.
yourself, or thinkers, writers, that's where everything originates. So I have heard these kind of comments about my own profession being in the media, and I had men commenting actually saying, it's always nice to have a woman on top. This is the best comment that they could, this is the way the people approach. So Shikha ma'am, going forward, how do you think, ma'am, I mean, who is the custodian of this kind of a change other than people like us? We're sitting on an afternoon, Friday afternoon, talking about this, but who do you think is a custodian? Because why are people not reacting? Why are women not reacting when we have offensive or unacceptable kind of content or instances on the screen?
Whenever we talk about, and it's been again being said, that it is what the society wants is what we portray. So I think It is a typical what came first, the chicken or the egg story, which is working, and we keep blaming each other that we portray what the society wants. I think the buck stops with all of us, each and every one of us. None of us can, say that it is A, B, C, D or somebody who has to. It stops with all of us. Just, we have to raise our voice in our own little way, whichever way, whether it is about wherever you are, making that possible, that making sure that women are given their due and portrayed in the right manner. And if you are a consumer or a customer, making sure that you also try to express that yes, there is a change required. I mean, and it happens. I mean, I remember as a teenager seeing the Cadbury's ad. We all have seen that Cadbury's ad where a girl runs into the pitch and dances. And now there is a change. Now you see it is a woman player scoring and a male boy running inside and doing it. So change is coming. It is not that it's coming. The pace may, but why did it happen? Why did a company like Cadbury's think that it needs to change that narrative? Because they realize that yes, there is a customer base who wants that kind of narrative, and it will get appreciated. It's got appreciated. Or there's a recent Facebook ad about a girl, a small town girl running a sweet shop and all, and everybody helping out. So these are the things which are making a difference, but people have started talking about. So I think the buck stops with all of us. We all, in our way, are responsible for what is happening, and we all, in our own way, have the power to ensure that it changes.
Absolutely, ma'am, because otherwise the ramifications can be really, really dangerous. We all know one of the banned documentaries of when the Nirbhaya case happened, the rapist interview revealed a lot of things about what actually goes on in the mindset of men. And the more and we show women as helpless, I mean, it's surprising, ma'am, many a times, I mean, you should obviously take a lot of offense to some things like this, ma'am. Many a times, even in a cop's uniform, because she is the heroine or she is the female actor in the film, she is made to stop thinking. She is the one who is helpless, and the hero could be an antisocial, some kind of a smuggler or a criminal, but he's more powerful. He is the one who rescues her, who saves her, and this is the kind of message that we are giving to our audience.
But in a lighter vein, I would like to support my male police officer colleagues also, because none of them are Singhams. And for none of them, the jeeps fly off by a kickoff. So it's like it goes always.
Right, ma'am. So Srini, what do you feel is who should be the voice of change? Who should take this forward in a very constructive, because we can't just talk about this and go home and then do our own usual thing, watch something and then get away with it. So let people get away with it.
I really agree with what ma'am just said, because whenever somebody tried to act like a custodian, they're met with immediate resistance, and the next thing that comes up is like freedom of speech. I have the right to make this film as I want to make it. So rather than one person being in charge who decides what is right and what is not right to go onto screen, we have to develop a voice, parallel to what's happening on screen. People need to talk about what is accepted and what is not accepted outside of the film. Like, this voice has to be there, like pockets everywhere, people talking about it. That's when change will really penetrate the media, is what I think.
I think social media is a very powerful
Yes.
place right now to,
Yes.
enforce some kind of a,
And also, I think if we were to choose a custodian, probably then what we should do is like train people to look at things a certain way. Like last 10 years, when I've seen people debate filmmakers, debate with filmmakers on certain issues which they found objectionable, what really made the whole movement fizzle out is, they didn't really have any grip on what they're talking about. And I'm making a broad statement, but I'd like to take it back. But what I say is, like, if you really are pinpointed about, what is it that you find objectionable, and if that is conveyed, then I think definitely change will happen.
Great thought, Srini. So Dr. Pranati, your thoughts on should women be more in the forefront making decisions to impact change, or you feel it's also a man's responsibility?
Yeah, so it has to happen parallelly, I think. When we talk about portraying stronger women, we also have to start portraying a new man, whose strength is not considered. Like Shikha madam pointed out, somebody who's a young mind particularly is so vulnerable, and it's like a sponge. It'll absorb everything and think that is right, and films have a great influence. So if a young mind watches a movie where they find that, slapping a woman brings her onto their side, or paying 5,000 rupees for a kiss makes them a hero, then we are portraying the wrong kind of men. Right. So I think we also parallelly should start portraying the right kind of men who respect, women for what they are and accept their roles as equal. And obviously, we have to start portraying women also differently. Unless they happen parallelly, it's going to be very hard. If we continue just focusing on how we are going to change portrayal of women, may not find as much acceptance, because men are an integral part of the society. We have to also train them that women are changing, and they need to understand that this change is for the better, because everyone buys into something if it's of benefit to them, not just because it's something that society is dictating. So I think it's very important to start portraying men differently, our heroes differently. Heroism is not being a macho man who's slapping around his woman and then she still continues to.
All of our super hit films, unfortunately, have had these men, ma'am, as we all know. So Nandini, your final point as we wind up.
I would like to see, in terms of commercial cinema, the leading men, the top, say, 10 male actors, and since I know a lot of them, I know they are not anything like the men they portray themselves on screen. A lot of them are very different. I would like them to take a lot more responsibility in terms of, portrayal of women, and they have the power to do that. They have the ability to say, let's not do this, and I believe some of them do. So, I think that would hasten the change very quickly, and they would also be paying attention to change that is happening, that it's there on the fringe. It may not be, absolutely, kind of reached where it should, but they will be paying attention to that, and I believe that shift is going to happen. I think we are on the edge of that change, and I think that it is going to happen. But I really wish they would take more active responsibility for choices that they are making. And I asked a couple of male filmmakers who are, big commercial filmmakers. I said, I know you personally. You're not the person who would, endorse this line of thought. You speak about other things. You speak about sensitivity and so many other kind of, gender inclusive issues. I know how you respect the women in your life. Why is there so much misogyny in the characters that you put out on screen? And he was silent for a moment, and then he laughed and he said, because I don't think I'd be able to get a commercial hero to do it if I actually wrote what I wanted to write. So I think it's also for those spaces where you want to be able to tell your stories boldly. So that's why I say the OTT is such an important space, because it is giving you that space which, is kind of, not confined to box office success. You have a space where you can tell a different kind of story and actually be that person also.
It was a very thought-provoking, insightful discussion today. So let's change our narrative from angry young man to hungry young woman. So, Srinivas Avasarala, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having
Dr.
me.
Pranati, thank you very much for being here. Nandini, thank you very much. We look forward to more films like Oh Baby from you. And Shikha ma'am, as always, it's been very, very insightful from your end too. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'd like to thank IAA for initiating this voice of change, and I wish to be part of it as much as I can in the times to come. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ramesh Narayan and Mr. Srinivasan Swamy. Just give us a moment, and an extremely invigorating session of how the change starts with all of us, no matter how tiny or big. It's all of us when we, You know, I'm reminded of a quote by Ratan Tata who said, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. I think this session summed up that beautifully. Ms. Meghna joining us to felicitate our moderator and panelists. Thank you to each of our panelists for taking time out. Ladies and gentlemen, may I remind you that all of them run extremely tight and busy schedules, and despite that, they took some time out to be with us and share their thoughts with us. So can we have a loud cheer for all of them, please? Thank you. And Ms. Swapna, thank you so much for initiating and spearheading this discussion in a very, very fruitful direction. Thank you. Thank you once again to all our panelists and moderator, and we'll have a quick group picture here. Thank you. Please join us in the audience, and ladies and gentlemen, with that, we move ahead with our second panel discussion for today. From gender conscious and purposeful entertainment, we're going to carry the same thread and move on to gender conscious creativity in communication. Please join me in welcoming on stage our moderator for the session. And before I invite her, I'm going to just take a few moments to introduce her to all of us. Ms. Megha Tata, Chief Executive Officer, Cosmos Maya India Private Limited. She has held leadership roles at organizations such as WB Discovery, BTVI, HBO, Turner International, and Star TV. She's an industry veteran. She leads multiple national as well as international industry forums and is an esteemed member of the National Media and Entertainment Committee of FICCI. She has been on the board of IBF. She served as the vice president of the IAA and as president of IAA India chapter from 2020 to 2022. She is recognized amongst the top 50 influential women in media, marketing and advertising, and was also conferred Woman of the Decade in Media by the Women Economic Forum in 2018. She was also adjudged among Asia's most inspirational women in leadership for 2022 by House of Rose Profession. An absolute delight to have her with us here today as a moderator for this session. Please, let's welcome her, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, we can do better than this. Hyderabad. Our first panelist for today, Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, IAS, Principal Secretary of Industries and Commerce and IT Departments of Telangana Government. Apart from spearheading initiatives that develop policy frameworks, attract new investments, identifying opportunities for utilizing IT in various government processes, he supports many social, cultural, and charitable causes and is on the boards and advisory committee of United Way Hyderabad, Save a Child's Foundation, Young Lives India, World Wildlife Fund, Hyderabad Literary Festival, Heal a Child Foundation, and many more. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. Our second panelist, Mr. Vijay Gopal VV, President SNE of RK Swami BBDO. In his over 35 years of experience, he has worked on clients like Sony, Citizen, Henkel, Sara Lee, Snickers, Chocolates, and Confectionery, Pedigree, Maxis Aircel Telecom, Fujitsu, AMP. The list is endless, ladies and gentlemen. Let's please welcome Mr. Vijay Gopal VV, President, SNE of RK Swami BBDO. Our third panelist, Mr. Hemant Agarwal, Chairman and Managing Director of Associated Advertising. He has a wealth of experience working with a variety of brands, including Bambino Vermicelli, Freedom Edible Oil, Union Bank, Canara Bank, Apollo Hospitals. He's a firm believer that advertising should be truthful, credible, and reflective of society's aspirations. And our fourth panelist, Dr. Shaili Swaroop, prosthodontist and implantologist fellow ICOI USA, founder the Tooth Company. She started this institution in 2016 with a drive to address prominent issues in the dental field, such as patient anxiety, poor sterilization practices, and below standard quality of dental treatments. She continues to pursue her passion as a profession. And with that, I hand over the session to our moderator.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's quite a privilege to be part of this wonderful session, and thank you all the panelists for agreeing to be part of this very important discussion. 2 years ago, when I was the president of the India chapter of IAA, I had a dream of starting an initiative which not only becomes a talk which we just want to do in events like this, but become a movement, and not just in our society, but and especially in our communication industry. And I'm so glad to see that the way this has found a momentum of its own, wherein not only in large summits like this, but even at some of the grassroots level, we are making a difference, one voice at a time, breaking one bias at a time. And it's been a great journey so far, and I'm thankful for Rani and the Sakshi group to have supported this to bring it into this wonderful city. So thank you so much, lady and gentlemen. Good to see that there are more men in this panel than women, because as we've seen that to break the bias, women of course have to speak up, but unless men speak up and understand the need for this change in our society, it's going to be a long battle. So I want to start, we've gone through a lot of data points. We've seen and we've realized that there is a need to change. The needle is moving for sure, but slowly. We've had some fantastic speakers previously speak about from their own personal experiences, and especially the previous panel which spoke about the film industry and the content we are creating as the topic says, from 30 seconds to 3 hours. So to some extent, the 3 hours have got addressed, and we wanted to talk a bit more about the 30 seconds piece. But just making that whole sort of a topic a little more larger, going beyond advertising only, it's also the communication. And this eclectic group here would be a conversation I'm hoping to bring some insights from. So let me start with you, sir, Mr. Ranjan. You host, you're responsible for many diverse portfolios. You've done a lot in Government of India, and we know that our Government of India is one of our biggest spenders as well when it comes to advertising. I just wanted to get your views that what do you think the Government of India can do to address some of these issues which we are facing in our society with reference to gender representation in communication? Have we done anything? Do you think we can do more? And if any, there are initiatives which are being taken or can be taken to address that?
Sure. Thank you, Madhviji. Greetings to fellow panelists. Greetings to all the participants. Before I answer you, let me congratulate IAA for bringing together this wonderful initiative to our city of Hyderabad, for getting such eminent people speak about this very relevant topic from their own experiences, from their perspectives. I would also like to thank Rani Reddy Garu for inviting me to become a part of this panel. Madhviji, so while the government...
It's Megha.
Oh, sorry, pardon me. So, Megha ji, so while the government can do so many things, but I would like to speak about one very fundamental thing. You will recall that when this gruesome incident, the Nirbhaya incident, happened in Delhi, few months later, a very in-depth study was done about the perpetrators. Who are they? What kind of social contexts they come from? What kind of upbringing have they had? What is their kind of education and stuff like that? It was a very thoroughly researched study conducted by a very prominent NGO in Delhi. And it is not that the study has told something which is starkly new. We intuitively know of these things. But the very fundamental origin of much of the misogyny that we see in the society actually comes from child rearing practices. How do you raise the child in your home at a very young age? And the most foundational ages are, let us say, from a year and a half till about 3 years. In those 1.5 years, or approximately 2 years. Whatever messaging, whatever signaling that goes into the minds of the child, any effort later on, I mean, not to say that nothing is worth it, you should kind of keep trying, but the seeds are sown very, very strongly at that point in time. So all these Nirbhaya perpetrators, for instance, came from families which were extremely patriarchal. I don't know, where do you come from? Are you from the north of India or from somewhere else?
North.
So you would be familiar with, again, this is not a generalization. I'm not running down any community or anything, but I mean, it's just a coincidence that most of them, I guess all of them, came from the family of Haryanvi Jats, and they are raised in a particular way. The language which the father uses against to the mother, that is very abusive. The father-wife beating is very, very common. The woman is just seen as an object or a slave moving around the house, and so on and so forth. So if the child is raised or reared in that kind of an environment, obviously this is the messaging that goes into his head, that shapes his worldview, that tomorrow when I become older, or if I have any opportunity to interact with women, that is the way I have to treat them, with complete disrespect and lack of values and ethics, etc. So this is, in my opinion, a very fundamental thing. I'm also, apart from the fact that I am a part of the government here, I'm also a trained psychologist. I studied psychology in Delhi University, in IIM Calcutta, and subsequently also I've kind of maintained my interest in this subject. So what I feel is that child rearing practices are the most important in eliminating misogyny from our minds, in our midst, from our society. And that is one intervention if the governments, because this requires a kind of tipping point to be reached. I mean, I can educate this person, that woman, but that is not enough. Unless I give a very strong social context that women have rights, women have respect. In fact, I mean, the even more foundational thought would be that men are surviving in the world today, or existing in the world today because of women. So how can you be mean and demeaning and dehuman to someone who is the cause of your origin? And if this message is spread far and wide and percolates in the right communication channels, which influences the minds of such people, that is the most long-lasting and sustainable thing which the governments can do. Again, as I said, not to indicate that governments need to do nothing else. I mean, everything else that the previous panelists spoke about, those are also very important responsibilities. But this is something which we have been kind of ignoring or postponing, or kind of looking the other way, or thinking that it is too big a task, the government just will not be up to it. I guess that needs to change, and we need to make a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't know whether we can divide it by geography, because I think that this kind of incidents happen across the country,
No,
across demographics.
I mentioned that in a specific context of the Nirbhaya case.
Yeah. So I think it's great that the fact that you do believe that government can make a difference and support it. And I think I just want to say that on behalf of IAA that we are there to support the government in whatever way you would like us to help create, break these biases. So taking this thought forward, Vijay, I'd like to ask you that, you've been in the advertising for so many years. You've created a lot of advertising for brands across. What is, in your opinion, in the last, say, decade, you see, do you see there is a change in the way the creative community is responding to content creation, which is more conscious about these biases? Is there a process we have in this ecosystem, in the brief we have, in the strategy discussion, in the creative discussion? Do you see the needle moving?
I think that way, as an organization, we've been pretty fortunate.
Can you put the mic?
We've been pretty fortunate as an organization because most of the women who were developing the content or the creative heads were all women. So we never really faced that problem. But if I look at it, yes, there definitely has been a change. People are being more vocal about what's right, what's wrong. But and some of the speakers earlier had mentioned about this. I think we need to accelerate a greater change. Because as an observation, I'd gone through the UNICEF report, which was on the internet. I also went through the ASCII report, Gender Next. Most of the conversations are about how women are portrayed, what's happening. I think Charulata spoke about it, and she was talking about insights. Okay. What's important is that people who run the campaigns do not realize or know the power they have. Okay? So the significance and the power of storytelling, that's tremendous. And this has been there, and this is how we actually as species have evolved. Yuval Noah Harari says that the result of what we are today is because of our ability to cooperate. And the ability to cooperate is all due to the myths that we hold as a collective. Otherwise, where's an organization? Where's the concept of a nation? Where's the concept of currency? We all have the same myths. And where do these come from? They all come from the storytelling which happens. So storytellers and storytelling is extremely important. We shape narratives. In fact, I don't want to get into the women-centric thing, but let me give you a neutral example of quinoa. The minute quinoa was discovered, it was all said that, hey, that was the narrative. That this is a superfood, high in protein, high in fiber, you name it, and it all went northeast. And then suddenly someone also said, hey, this is going to help the poor farmers in Bolivia and Peru, and it shot up. Before someone realized that, and then another narrative came in, that, because people are eating so much of quinoa, prices of quinoa is going up, so the poor farmers who are raising quinoa, they are unable to afford their own traditional food. And you have all kinds of social media influencers writing that I'm giving up eating quinoa. And then it said that, hey, you know what? The agricultural land, so the Andes is being destroyed because of quinoa farming, so it's having an environmental impact. It fell further. Now, here is a narrative which is actually driving behavior. So narratives become extremely important. And I think that is happening because end of the day, when we have to make choices, and I call them, or someone else has coined the phrase, competing truths. I need to exercise my thing more responsibly. So, and I think this responsibility of people talking about or choosing their competing truths is increasing because businesses are realizing, and this is a personal experience, I see more and more senior management people saying this. So this is more anecdotal than research, but yes, they are understanding that their brands are actually the social manifestations of their business. The brands is where the company meets the society. So they're going beyond doing this and saying, hey, we need to have a larger purpose than just a commercial proposition. We need to have a point of view in the world than a position in the category. So that change has already happened. They are certainly being more sensitive to gender and the way we look at it. But at the same time, I think insights, what she has mentioned, that also exists. Or even the Honorable Governor was mentioning that this is what the society wants and that's what we give. So that's really the conflict that one needs to resolve. But that is happening. So you're finding better ways of managing that.
Good. That's great to know that, you're seeing the change happen, and we have a lot of young people here in the room as well. And I think I have two young daughters as well, and I know that that generation is very conscious about this. They are consuming a lot of content. They have a point of view, and social media is obviously playing a key role. In fact, to your point about managing sort of the insights in the business of doing things and being conscious, in one of our road shows we did on the ground in one of the agencies, one of the panelists had a very interesting take, which left a mark in my mind, is that, she said, when I get a brief, right, if there is a way a certain thing has to be done, I just ask one question. And that question is, will it change if? So if there is a casting happening, for example, would it change, would the entire goal of the campaign change if instead of casting a 8-year-old boy, you cast an 8-year-old girl? Would the goal change if instead of, showing a woman in a cleavage showing outfit versus she's wearing a full closed outfit? You don't have to sort of completely shift the narrative, but even those subtle changes can make a difference. And if the answer to that question is no, the business goals still do get maintained, then maybe you're making a movement in that space. So I thought that was an interesting filter to add in the creating process. So over to you, sir, Mr. Agarwal. You've been in the industry for many years as well. You've had a lot of brands, you've had a big role to play to make success. Any examples which stand out for you of companies or brands, whether in your portfolio or outside, who have actually been able to make a change in understanding and being more conscious about the way their creativity process is going without deviating from the overall business objectives?
Thank you. Good evening. So yes, I would say that today brands require to get into a lot of generative, conversations. What I mean by generative conversations, that they are like jazz music. Once it starts, it goes on and on. So you need to probably pick up, situations or get those insights from society, which are very important. Let me give you a small example. Today we see a lot of young people getting divorced very, very soon, in a matter of few months. And if you go deeper into that, one would see that both of them are working, but then when it comes to managing the home, it's all about the girl who has to manage the house, and the boy is simply sitting and saying, hey, it's not my job. Now, where does this come from? This comes from probably the upbringing or the way he has seen his mother doing everything at home. So I would like to see brand create, communication around, okay, what about a boy being taught by a mother how to cook, at least the basics. There would be a certain sense of that, yes, this is a, dual responsibility that I need to take. And that is probably where, if the brand starts this conversation, we'll see more and more brands join that. And it will create a ripple effect to change the society very fast. So like you said, needle has to move. We need to reach a tipping point. Where is the tipping point coming in? So it has to be a comprehensive process by every brand to join in this, some kind of a movement.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. I think that's where, the previous panelists also have highlighted that I think the communication industry, the creative industry can play a big role because it does leave an impact, whether you're seeing a commercial, like someone said, we don't know, it's a chicken and egg. What is influencing what? Is society influencing the creativity, or is creativity influencing the society? But I think as responsible communication experts, I think we should make those, steps towards making those changes, which is great. Now let me come to you, Doctor. Interesting person in this panel, not necessarily a communication expert, but yet a huge communication expert, because I think you're also a client, you also advertise, I reckon, right? So, and I just wanted to get your view on as an individual of the society, as a woman, young professional woman in the society, and you have young kids as well, and hence, and a daughter, and an influence to her, I'm sure. What is your opinion about how communication as an industry can and should play a role in actually making the changes in breaking these biases?
As a dental professional and a dental practice owner, we have very strict guidelines on the kind of marketing we're allowed to do. So as a dental professional and a dental practice owner, there are very strict guidelines that we have to follow when we market our practice. We're not allowed certain things, and should you do it, there's unnecessary trouble. So our marketing is purely within what we call the current norms. But as a professional, do we know that the dental field is actually a female-dominated field? Most people don't know that. We have patients who come and ask us for a male dentist, because if you look at the advertising industry and the ads that I put out, they're all male dentists. 95% of ads put out are male dentists, but there's a 15% more female dentist ratio. Colleges intake 75% female to male ratio. Why isn't that being portrayed? So is the female profession here being undermined? So that's from the professional perspective. But as a consumer and as somebody who provides aesthetic services in the space of dentistry, I think what the advertising industry or media unfortunately has done has standardized or defined a smile. Perfectly aligned, white, bold, chiclet type teeth. That's not perfect. In my very personal opinion, I think what they've done is they've defined an emotion. Because every smile is beautiful. Yes, a healthy smile is what we're looking for. White teeth are not perfect. White teeth are not natural. It's the blacks who actually have whiter teeth than us. But why is everybody running after the white teeth? Why is everybody looking for perfectly aligned, big, bold, bright teeth? So over the years, of course, what's happened over so many decades can't be corrected overnight, but can it be corrected? And is it being corrected? Yes, it is being corrected. We are seeing a huge shift in what the media is portraying today. From the likes of companies like Colgate by Palmolive, you see their previous ads, Buddy must get a girl. This young 6-8-year-old boy who's brushing his teeth in front of the mirror, and he says, Buddy must get a girl. Is that what women are looking for, and is that what men think they're being looked for? Women, men want the come closer smile. You've stereotyped a woman. You've also, in the whole process, I believe you've also stereotyped the male. Is that all the male is looking for? Just a smile? What happened to the brains? Right? But today, off late, in the last couple of years, I'd say more 2 years or so, there are some absolutely fabulous ads that have come out. You look at YouTube and these ads, there's this one particular one that struck home for me, which was Choose Strong, which is this little family. It's a nuclear family. It's mom and daughter sitting in front of the TV playing video games. Daddy from the back comes in with a plate of food for his daughter, and he says, what do you want? And I watched it in Kannada, so I couldn't even understand the language here. He brings a plate of soft food and hard food, and he says, which one? And she picks the food which was more chewy, like carrots, and she says, because I'm strong, Daddy. So that's the game changer here. You see the male character here, who's the husband and father, offering a plate of food to a daughter and mother who's sitting and happily enjoying a game of video games.
Fantastic.
For me, that's home, because that's what I go through every single day.
True.
That's reality at my home.
That's wonderful. What a fabulous example indeed. I think that just, that's really deserves a round of applause, Shaili. And I love the way she said it, that's home, you know. That is how all of us are dealing on a day-to-day life. So then the question is then who is not copying what? Like if you say that we're not really representing the society, if this is the real society, then why is the communication not sort of representing that? And that's a beautiful example indeed. So I think, and I love the fact that, you know, there is perfection in imperfection, you know, that is what you're trying to say, and that's wonderful, and I do hope that more and more such creative work comes out from our brands and clients. So just, we're short on time. I'm going to take one quick round of question and sort of end this because I think I'm getting the looks from Rani. Is that, Mr. Ranjan, do you think that, you know, can we look at a consciously working with the government on driving this messaging? So, for example, you know, I know the government of India has taken some amazing causes and have really done some fantastic creative work, and it takes time to build this change, as we all know. So, since it's all being spoken about, it's an important topic, it is something at every society level we need to address. Can the government of India do something which is very consciously driving in creating communication to address this bias?
Absolutely. So I completely agree with the views which fellow panelists have expressed. I'll just want to make a kind of a additional point, which is that when you look at the consumers of communication, consumers of advertising, they are not homogeneous. There's lots of heterogeneity amongst them. I'm not very sure if the heterogeneity amongst the consumers is actually understood or reflected in the campaigns which are run. The urban, educated kind of consumer has a certain kind of values, and if those values are reinforced, that would be great. The expression will be that that is home. But at the same time, you also have a larger mass of consumers who are rural, who might not have been educated that well. Some of their mindsets may still be in the 19th century. So how do you address them? And if you address them in something which is very, very different from their worldview, you also run a problem that you kind of cut yourself off from that communication because it is too drastic to even accept or think about. So how do you gradually nudge them through smaller pieces of communication? But at the end, there's a particular outcome that you wish to achieve. So I guess this kind of a nuanced way of communicating, advertising, I'm not sure. I'm not from that industry, so I can't be very dismissive and I can't say that it is not there. But at least I don't see too much of evidence for it. Similarly, there is a vernacular medium. So while you and I can speak fluent English, but there are a large number of people who need to be communicated in their own vernacular languages. So what kind of creativity is available in that space? And of course, I would ideally like the government's priorities, our goals, etc., to be also aligned with the goals and ambitions of the industry. All of us know this, that about 5 years ago, our Honorable Prime Minister started a very important flagship program, which is called Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. And no one will deny this, how significant that campaign is for the whole of the country. But have we really done enough kind of grassroots level of homework? Have we taken a very deep dive to understand what appeals in the north will be something different, which will appeal in the south, and the variations regionally, segment-wise, and so on and so forth. So that is what I would like to happen more. And definitely there are enough opportunities to collaborate, because eventually the government's credibility also is enhanced if you run strong campaigns which focuses on the needs of the people.
Very well said, sir. Thank you. And I do hope that we can partner together in some form to drive that communication. One question to both of you gentlemen: since we have a lot of young marketers and young professionals in the room, one advice you'll give to them on what should they be thinking when they are putting a creative strategy or a brand strategy together for the launch of any product or brand they might be to address this, because they themselves are very conscious about this bias. But from your experience, what should the prism they should look through when making that creative campaign? Vijay, first you maybe.
The one thing that I would say is that, and it might sound didactic, but it is a fact, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So,
culture strategy for breakfast, nice.
So I didn't say that, Peter Drucker. But that's what we always say and do. Culture does play a very, very important role, because end of the day, if you're looking at marketing communications, what is it? It is nothing but the product or brand and a representation of culture which is put in a framework of a narrative. So there is a huge representation of culture, and this is something which I find most of us are missing out because we are all worried about how it is being represented, why, 58% are like this, 32% are like that. All of that is fine. But the underlying question as to why is it happening the way it is happening is not being looked into. And my own suspicion is that we are an unconscious patriarchy, whether we like it or not. And all of this is driven by our culture. So if you have to really look into it, you have to understand what is culture, what are the dimensions of culture, because more often than not, we just look at the outer and the superficial representations or expressions of culture, like the monuments, the food, the language, the clothes, the art, the fashion, etc. We don't go into the underlying things like the values and norms or the deeper values, the deeper things that we hold, which is more existential in nature. Now, how do I get there? How do I bring about a change there in the values and norms, which is really what will change the behavior? Now, that's something which we need to, because again, when you look back at marketing communications, it is nothing but brand or a product plus a representation of culture. Now, if that component, if you try to tinker with, bring in whatever that is required, probably you will end up doing a lot more.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vijay. Mr. Agrawal?
So to add to that, I would say that if you need to create narratives which are culturally relevant and which will move the brands, you must actually go down and meet your customer first. Not sit in your rooms and try to create campaigns or narratives which will not work. How much do you really know them? Have you gone deep dive into their homes, seen how do they behave? And that is where the narrative will really come right. Otherwise, you'll be only doing something which is on the armchair business, and that doesn't work really.
Wonderful. Getting to know the customer, going down to the grassroots level, and what, in your opinion, Shailesh, should be that grassroots level change we should be making at a society level?
I think one step at a time, slow and steady, not just the media, but even at home, us as parents, us as children, us as sisters, how we treat our family, how we accept them, portray them. Each of these things has to be changed, and I think it starts within. We start, they follow, they start, we follow. It's a to and fro. I don't think they're entirely responsible for the change, and nor are we. It's a cumulative effort that needs to be made consistently, slowly, steadily, because it will be reposted, it will be reshared, retweeted. This ad will be recycled, and it will eventually leave a mark. And that's what I believe will cause the change.
Wonderful. You know, we're just hoping that that change comes faster. We've seen some movement. The other day, again, in a panel, we were discussing, let's talk of some ads which have actually made a difference. And I got to know the same brands which keep being spoken about. It's Ariel Share the Load, there's Horlicks may have done, Tanishq, and there's 5-6 clients, brands, which probably you can count in the fingertips. And but I think that's a great move, that's a great step forward, but long way to go before we actually, yes, Vijay.
We made an ad called Lali for women and the girl child ministry of women, and one of those. This was many years back. Not Ladli, Lali.
Lali, yeah.
Okay, it was a 2-minute film. I don't think any ad ever made me cry.
Yeah.
But that one did. And it was about the girl child. So I don't know, but if it's not there, we'll try and put it up back on YouTube or something like that and send a link across. Yeah, but that's the kind of communication that we probably should
absolutely. We need more of such ads which not just make us cry, but make the change. Absolutely. I think that's how we should be making that changes. So on that, I'd like to thank each one of you for your time and your inputs and your insights. It's been a wonderful discussion, and I do hope that all of us can break these biases soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Megha, and thank you to all the panelists. May I invite Mr. I. Venkat, IAA Mancom member, and Mr. Abhishek Karnani, Vice President IAA, to kindly join us on stage to felicitate our panelist and moderator. And some really pertinent questions being raised in this session, ladies and gentlemen, from collaboration to tailor-making ads that can suit the various segments that India is divided into in terms of language. And of course, recreating, the center of this being recreating the narrative. Thank you. Can we have one loud round of applause for all our panelists? I request Mr. Venkat and Mr. Abhishek to kindly felicitate our panelists, and then, of course, our moderator for spearheading this session so beautifully, so that all of us here can make that choice of doing whatever we can in our ability to be the voice of change. Thank you. Let's move ahead with our last session for the day, ladies and gentlemen. A fireside chat on conscious creativity in films, OTT, and advertising. May I please invite on stage once again the moderator for the session, Ms. Swapna. And Ms. Swapna will be in conversation with Ms. Manasa Varanasi, Femina Miss India 2020. And as she joins us her on stage, I would like to share a little bit about her. She represented India at the 70th edition of Miss World in Puerto Rico. Her interest and work is centered around fashion, film, and soil. In the past, she volunteered for an organization, Make a Difference, which focused on equitable education for vulnerable children in India. And with the help of her Miss India platform, she works very closely with WDCW of Telangana to identify and rescue children in distress using the National Children Helpline 1098. Thank you, Ms. Mansa, for joining us today. And may I also invite on stage to join Ms. Swapna and Ms. Mansa, Ms. Deepthi Rabola, Chief Executive Officer, WeHub, Government of Telangana. With 15 years of experience working in the US of A with Palm, Nokia, Atheros, Qualcomm, among others in RF communication roles, she's a strong proponent of girls in STEAM, empowerment through economic enablement, women in leadership roles, and women in decision-making spaces. She's also a Chevening Gurukul Fellow at Oxford University and is an Aspen Fellow. And may I now hand over the session to Swapna.
Thank you, Shilpa, once again for a brilliant introduction. And welcome, Manasa, welcome, Deepthi. It's actually quite intimidating to have two gorgeous, brainy women on stage. So Deepthi was just commenting, I want to start off on a lighter note since we've had a lot of brainstorming all day. Deepthi was just saying we have two queens here, a beauty queen and I'm just queen. So I just give that to Deepthi. So Manasa and Deepthi, let's have an engaging chat to wind up today's beautiful session. Manasa, we've been talking about a lot of things that perhaps, very directly put you in a space of wondering what this is all about. And you yourself come from the beauty industry, and we're talking of conscious creativity in the media space, in the entertainment space, and about breaking the bias. So, first of all, can you share your experience of being part of a beauty pageant where you were measured top to toe on various norms set by the industry? And very, very sportively, I'd like to ask you this question, please.
Hi, Swapna. Thank you for the question. And a very good evening to everybody here. Thank you, Rani Garu, for having me. It's a real happy moment to be sharing this memorable evening with all of you. Speaking about beauty pageants, right? I think for the longest time, my perception of beauty pageants was very different from what it is today. I grew up in a typical Telugu traditional middle-class family, and so for the longest time, engineering, stable job, and settlement was the mantra back at home. However, somewhere deep down, after having done my computer science and joining a job, I realized that this rebel inside of me, this curious cat, wanted to connect with a purpose much bigger. She said, dream big, do more. And one thing led to another, and of course, Miss India happened. But speaking about just beauty, right, in the context of a competition where we're judged every day. I think a lot has changed, right? Beauty pageants have really evolved over the years. The notion of beauty has really changed over the years. And back in the day, I think beauty used to be looked at as this rare, exquisite thing, very hard to attain. But today, in the current day and age, everybody looks at beauty as something that they want to see represented, right, in all media, in all forms. And I love that about the way the beauty industry is going is because people are finally asking, why is it that people that we see in our communities, people that we see around us, why are they not being represented, right, in the popular notion of beauty? And that has led to so much transformation. And in the space of beauty pageants, I had the chance to represent India at Miss World. And of course, I shared this roof with 99 incredibly stunning women from across the world, the best of the best. And I had the most magical experience. Of course, the first thing that you see is what meets the eye, right? The skin-deep definition that people often refer to it as. But what really stands out to me is not what I saw, but what I heard, the stories that we exchanged. I remember meeting some of the most magical women, right, their stories. I met this girl who was forced to flee the war with her family. And it was incredible listening to her story of bravery and courage. I met somebody else who lends her voice to Disney princesses in Disneyland. I met another woman who grew up in a caravan all her life because her father used to dig wells in African villages. And so she practically grew up studying in a caravan. And when I look back at the beauty pageant, right, sure, it's a competition, we're being judged every day, but what really stands out is these stories of courage and immense personality. And so it's not really a competition, but I look at it as a celebration, and I'm so grateful to carry all the energy that these wonderful ladies have imprinted on my heart.
Well, thank you, Manasa, for a brilliant beginning. So Deepthi, we've listened to Manasa speak her experience, and Deepthi, in the context of conscious creativity, obviously all day we've been talking about portrayal, gender-conscious entertainment, and so in this context, what strikes you the most when you look at the average, form of entertainment and the portrayal of, various genders, whether it's men or women? What strikes you the most?
So, thank you, Nani ma'am, for including me in this conversation. Mansa, it's very tough act to follow after what you started with. So, what really strikes me, first of all, I don't watch a lot of television. So, and one of the things which always still continues to go on is that in spite of the changing times, what really strikes me every time is that while the gender norms are kind of shifting, one of the most interesting things is that now, in addition to being a career woman, a woman has to actually make sure that she's managing everything brilliantly. Mm-hmm. And everything that we see in media is about perfection, not just in looks, but also being the best at work, being the best compassionate boss, being the most hands-on mom, being the perfect cook, perfect hostess, 9 to 5, everything, right? So if anything, what I notice is that the norms are still the same, but they look a lot more millennial of sorts, but nothing is really majorly changed.
Right. So, Manasa, when you look at beauty pageants and what we've been talking about all day today, about, a woman having a certain kind of a body, a certain kind of a skin tone, and, her height and statistics being in a certain way, obviously the discussion is on the lines of, how it is actually putting a pressure or putting women into a certain mold or a stereotype. So what is your perspective on how do you balance this, or how do you look at this whole thing completely? I mean, do you look at it as we need beauty pageants and we need good-looking women to be emphasized and shown in the forefront? Because obviously the entire industry focuses so much on looks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think since we are again speaking about beauty pageants, I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me is representation, right? Seeing these incredibly diverse women together is what really stood out. And when I say diverse, I don't really mean in terms of cultural identities, right, which was pretty evident. I mean, even in terms of skin color, body shape, size, there's just so much diversity and representation out there. And I feel like social media especially has helped us transform that perception. We see so many figures, influencers, we see celebrities, we see meaningful people on the ground doing the hard work to kind of make a mark and say, hey, we exist, and we all have personalities, and we all have something to offer to the table.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that way social media has really shifted the paradigm, because it's no longer about the magazines and what we see on the ads, but it's more about the humanity behind the face that we see.
So your perspective is that the face of beauty has evolved with time.
Absolutely.
And I think we're able to see women, even in context of specifically looks-focused context, we're able to see them as beyond just their looks.
Yes, yeah. we still have a long way to go in that space, I believe. I think it's very important to draw the difference between being sexual and embracing your sexuality versus being objectified and sexualized, right? I think it's super important to own your sexuality, own who you are, express yourself through your fashion choices, your voices, right? Be who you are and embrace it. But I think it's just a little bit ironic, because in society, when a woman chooses to embrace her sexuality, it's considered a matter of shame. But when the same society, right, is sexualizing her or objectifying her for some kind of social or economic gain, then it's okay because profit, right? So this is a big, I think, debate that we all need to ask and fight with, because there's so many different representations of women that we see in social media, and there's a very fine line that needs to be treaded carefully. And I think this representation is really going to make the difference to kind of push us and catalyze this change that we've already seen even further.
Yeah, Deepti, would you agree with what Manasa just said? I mean, specifically in the context of what you do, you deal with a lot of women who are, managers, who are administrators, who are something that we don't normally see on our, in our palette of, entertainment, whether it's in OTTs. And even if you see successful women there, they are invariably considered to be, very nosy, very pushy and dominating, and, various other qualities which are not very typical or, not very flattering. So would you like to add something, Deepti, to what Manasa just said?
So yes, we are, when it comes to the space that I work in, a lot of the things that Manasa was speaking about do not actually come into force so much, because we are all there to get something done, and we are all there for a purpose. But coming down to the portrayal or the perception of what a good manager or somebody who's a good boss is, a lot of people do come in with a perception that, if somebody is at the top, they are there because they've pushed a lot of people around, or when they're trying to kind of get something done, they are seen as very aggressive. Or if somebody is trying to, let's say, stick to deadlines or whatever, then they are micromanaging. If they are trying to, explain something, there's a lot of perceptions around. And a lot of that is not due to the fact that the media or anything is not changing, but the fact that very few women are still part of the creative process as such. So if you see your look around, you find a lot of role models, but who is to represent them when it comes to the drawing board for the kind of ads and everything that actually goes around, or the media that is actually going around? I think having more participation of women in writing and directing and actually being part of the creative process and production process, beyond just doing all the regular things that women are expected to do, I think will actually make life easy for a lot of us as well.
Right.
The reason is, obviously, we are trying to do everything that we are supposed to do to get the work done. But the fact is, we have to deal with a little bit more of a perception challenge than probably we should be dealing with.
Do you feel that somewhere we are influencing the society through the kind of content we provide, the kind of stereotypes we make, where a woman's career is still an option. It's not supposed to be, the way, but it is a way, one of the ways. And we have men encouraging a woman to do, her bit in society and, whatever. So
it's very interesting. So when Rani ma'am told me about this yesterday, I started researching a little bit more about portrayal of women in media and all that. So I came across a very interesting term called as femvertising. Femvertising.
Right.
Which is like showcasing or empowerment of women through advertising. What we are doing is there is one ad which was actually, I think I saw it on LinkedIn or something, where there is this very amazing, there is a lady who goes for a job interview, and then she's very skeptical, she's very stressed out about going into the room and getting her interview done. So she's looking at a man in a cabin, and then she's getting stressed out. And a very kind-hearted, kind lady sitting next to her is offering her rotis, chapatis, and saying, "Beta, how are you?" all that stuff. But so they strike up a conversation and all that. And then the HR person comes and tells this young lady that, your interview's done, you can leave. And this lady gets dejected, thinking that she never got a chance to go pitch to the boss. And turns out, the lady she was sharing food with is the boss. And there is a little bit of a problem there.
Right.
The reason is, the woman is still supposed to be the compassionate, kind person who is sitting outside and giving food to people. So even there is an overcorrection of a problem. And the second big challenge, or the big interesting thing that we keep noticing, is that not to say anything is right or wrong. So I have had the opportunity to live abroad for a few years, actually quite a bit. And then there is a lot of equal sharing of work so that both of us can have a career, right? Whereas when we look at the Indian ads, there is a lot of glorification of sharing the load. I don't know which ad it is. Again, it's Ariel or something, I don't know. But we are actually lauding partners or couples for sharing the work when both of them have the same kind of career. So that is, I think, something we need to really work towards to make sure that, it is not sharing the load, it is actually sharing a life more than anything else. And I think if we can work towards that, it will work a lot better.
Very, very interesting perspective. So I'd like to ask both of you this question. Someone just mentioned in the earlier panel about, cultural ideas and how we have certain attributes which are supposed to be, quote unquote, unique to women. Compassion, nurturing, sacrificing, giving in, being the softer one. And we are actually here speaking about equality. And there is certain uniqueness in both genders, and all genders, I would say, not just two, but all genders, the third gender as well. So in terms of what they bring to life and to society, where do we strike a balance? Because there's always something to fight for. There's always something to voice out and say that something needs to change. So how do we strike a balance, in this, Manasa?
I think men need to embrace the feminine side in them, and women need to embrace the masculine side in them. That's how we strike a balance.
Do we have a book where they mention how to do this?
If I do
I'm
find
sure.
one, you'll be the first one I'll tell. But I think this is very important for us to strike that balance, because even men, right, young boys from a very early age, they're told not to play with certain toys. They're told they cannot cry. They're told that they can only engage with emotions that are about power, strength, dominance, and competitiveness. Whereas females, on the other hand, a different set of toys to play with, different colors that they are asked to associate with. There's a clear binary that we're drawing from a very young age, which needs to change. And so I think as far as men are concerned, a great way for the male gender to balance is by simply tuning in with the emotion, to tune in with the vulnerable side of themselves, and not just the power, dominance, and alpha male behavior that society often pressurizes them to always embody, right? And as far as female are concerned, we need to claim space. We need to use our voice unapologetically, unabashedly, just like all men do. And I think that's where we strike that balance between both genders.
Surprisingly, Manasa, I mean, a lot of the actors, when you talk in the context of entertainment and, the kind of portrayal of, various characters, a lot of the actors are very conscious, intellectually, very, very stimulated on these matters, whatever we're talking about today. But when it comes to actually making a choice, we're not able to draw a line and actually say a strict no to this or a strict yes to this only. So why do you think we're not able to actually make it a practice when it comes to, conscious creativity?
I think one of the threats to conscious creativity is just capitalism. The fact that we live in a commercial world and there's money driving every decision that we take. And I think this is where the real challenge lies, which is, are we willing to be people who have the moral imagination and the courage to take a step which will challenge what we've built, the system that we've built for ourselves. And I think it's this courage that will really change that and break the redundance that we see in conscious creativity, right?
Right. Deepti, what to you is conscious creativity? I mean, in the context of, because we are talking about OTT and, advertisements, and we're talking about cinema and various other forms of content that engages us and also somewhere shapes the fabric of society. What do you think? Is it possible to even define what conscious is? Because it changes from context to context, it changes from land to land. And how do you then draw a balance as to what is relevant, what is working, what is not working?
If I'm in my very limited understanding, I think creativity is boundless. I think instead of trying to call it conscious creativity, I think we should look at responsible consumption. If we can actually let the creators be, then I think if we can actually shape, if let's say, again, it's all about perspectives, right? So I cannot go in and say that this is right or wrong, because we need to be able to separate in the perspective of the earlier panel discussion or the one before that, if we can actually separate the actor and the craft from the role he's playing, I think that is going to be a lot more of a support for him to grow more, right? Instead of that, if we kind of put a lot more of barriers around how to create things, then I think we'll only have one kind of thing. A small example, I don't know, it just happened about 2 weeks ago in our children's school. So there was a middle school election that was happening, and one of the kids, obviously, right, they're like 14 to 15-year-old kids. And one of them came up on stage and spoke about an influencer who was very recently arrested in Romania. And he actually did speak about, the child who was campaigning said that just like him will do something or the other. And a lot of kids actually cheered for it, right? So they are speaking about a person called Andrew Tate. I don't know how many of you are familiar with him. But when the children cheered, the entire faculty went into a panic, thinking that Andrew Tate he's supposed to be a trafficker and so many more things, but he leads a very apparently blingy lifestyle. So it was all on YouTube, Instagram Reels, and everything which comes to the children's viewing things, right? So when that guy is doing that, the school felt responsible, and they actually told the kids how to think, instead of making them aware of what the guy was doing. So while that person was doing whatever was doing, here the children felt that they had to think a certain way because that is what is directed. So that is where that was a discussion we were having at home. And one thing we then understood is that instead of trying to say what is right or wrong, we just tell them that this is what it is. And if we do more responsible consumption and more awareness itself about what an art and artist are different, if we can do that, I think we can just go on and be much more wholesome.
So then, taking this forward a step forward, who are the teachers of this change? I mean, you actually obviously gave the example of teachers at school, but then how does one enforce these things, and who takes on this? Who's the torchbearer of this change?
Self, home, that's it. If you feel you agree or disagree with something, it is your perspective. If we try to enforce it on others, that is where the problem starts. I think if we can just bring more awareness among each other, I think, and respect all perspectives, you don't have to side with it. You just need to respect everybody's perspectives and make sure that, we are able to have a lot more of a understanding of the other person, so that there can be lesser conflicts, lesser dependence, and lesser responsibility on everybody on how you want to view the world.
Right. So, very interesting perspective. Taking this just another step further, Manasa, I'm sure you would have seen the Vogue campaign, It's My Choice. So there were a lot of comments on, in the process of how we are trying to attain some kind of a feminist movement and trying to bring equality, and in the process trying to drive across things which are deemed as, not required or not positive. So, I mean, again, it's a choice as to what you look at. So, where do we get our most positive role models from? Or where do we get our whatever we're working towards?
Where do we get the most positive role models from?
Yeah, role models, or even, in trying to break stereotypes. Obviously, we don't want to create new stereotypes.
Yes.
But then, again, there is some kind of a paradigm we're walking towards. Or are we saying that let's drop these walls and that itself becomes its own, paradigm, and which will evolve with time, with what is real and what is true to us?
I think when we speak about role models who have the largest reach, it's evident: cinema, advertising. These are the best mediums to use to really drive the point home. But I think for everybody listening and everybody watching, we need to realize that we don't have to rely on a medium to change our mindset. There's so much that we can do ourselves. We have voices, we have minds of our own. We have so much information at our disposal, on our fingertips, in fact. There's YouTube, there's plenty of purposeful entertainment that you were speaking about. There's plenty of purposeful channels to take in information that can make a difference. And there are many organizations that have, in fact, started volunteering, right, in the spaces of making change, making positive change in society, whether it's in education, whether it's in our careers. I think there are so many people who are mobilizing themselves, friends, communities, high schoolers, and I think these guys are the real role models, because they're not waiting for someone to be a role model, and they've chosen to do it themselves. And each of us here can, in fact, do it ourselves. We can simply elect ourselves and say, I'm going to be a role model today. And that's where the change begins.
That's a very different perspective. You had a comment, Deepthi, on what Manasa just shared?
She's my role model already.
She's a role model already. You are a role model yourself. So then who voices out? Then why are we talking about this today? So what is relevant today in your own field of work or in your own life situation that makes you want to be part of this voice of change?
More than anything, I think it's all about making sure that, see, there is whenever as a head of a women entrepreneurship initiative, whenever we go to a place, we always hear about the challenges that women face. And I have been on many panels where, I'm going and saying that, I never had any problems in life and everything is cool and I'm never invited back. But the fact is there is somebody next to me who's saying that when I was born, my dad wanted to throw me on the floor and all that stuff, which is all true. I'm not trying to undermine anything. But the fact is, the reason I'm telling you the story is that we are here because there was a lot of people who created these pathways for us. It's all about us being a catalyst of change, right? Why are we having this conversation? To spark a conversation, that's about it. Because the more we talk about it, the more perspectives we get, and the more mainstream it becomes to say why not, and why should we do that. I think the more we can do it, the more curiosity we have, the more conversation we have, the more easy it is to have a cool life.
Very deep and very profound. So, Manasa, tell us 3 things that in your experience that you think will work to be the voice of change, that each and everyone can perhaps start, thinking about, or...
Number 1, curiosity. The same curiosity that she spoke about. I think we all need to have a curious cat. We're all born curious, in fact, as children, right? We have so many questions, we're trying to do this and that. And I feel like that curiosity should never die. It's going to help us challenge the status quo always and make better choices, make better decisions that will take us in the right direction. Apart from that, 2 more things that will help us become a voice of change. Action, right? With curiosity and questions comes the responsibility of action. So getting off our asses and doing what's necessary to use our voice in a purposeful way, number 2. And thirdly, to simply be a spark, to kind of spread our wings, right? I think we all have the power to create a ripple effect in our friend circles, in our families. And I think realizing and understanding that there is this power that we have in our voices and our hands, and that it's time we act upon it right away, is probably the 3 things that will help us become that voice of change.
Your inputs, Deepti, to be the voice of change before we can conclude today's session.
Read more first. Read more. Okay. Read everything that you find. Read books you agree with, don't agree with. Read. Broaden your perspective. Second thing is speak more, not speak up more. Speak up more and also speak more. Because speak for yourself and speak up for somebody who's not able to speak up. And last and most important thing, look for significance over success of anything. The reason I say this is because when we, like let's say we are doing something, there's a lot of joy in, just the success. But after a point, does that success actually make a difference in your life or somebody else? Right. If you can look at significance, I think that matters.
Well, a few very significant points you've shared today, Deepti, is about responsible consumption. That actually matters a lot. And a wonderful point that you mentioned, Manasa, about how the beauty industry, because you can't be in the beauty industry and try to pretend to be something else. I mean, beauty has certain norms laid down by the industry itself. But the point is how we separate it from being who we are. And the point is what kind of an importance or emphasis we give to it on a day-to-day basis. It is your profession that you're in this industry. And it is her profession that she's in the industry. This doesn't make you who you are. And, this is not what you are alone. There are other facets to you as well, which is what we are failing to acknowledge in our mainstream, course of all the various triggers, stimuli that we get, that we consume every day. And hopefully, in the generations to come, let's hope that, they will start realizing and consuming more responsibly, because we can't obviously stop what is coming in, but we can definitely curtail what we are taking in. So, Manasa Varanasi, thank you so much for this very wonderful
thank you
chat.
very much.
And Deepti, thank you so much. And two women with beauty and brains.
Let's break the bias.
Thank you, IAA, for this great opportunity to moderate another session here. And I look forward to more. Thank you.
I'll just take that. Thank you, Swapna, for moderating yet another beautiful fireside chat. And what a way to end the day. May I please invite Mr. Srinivasan Swamy to join us once again to felicitate Manasa and Deepti, please. So we have just one last leg of the event, ladies and gentlemen. But may I please invite on stage Ms. Megha Tata, Co-Chairperson, IAA Women Empowerment Committee and CEO Cosmos Maya once again. And before I ask her to propose the vote of thanks, we would like to take this moment to appreciate and acknowledge our sponsors. So as she joins us on stage, Freedom Oil, ladies and gentlemen, can we please invite Mr. Chetan Pimpal Khote, Marketing Head. I request him to join us on stage, and thank you for your support, sir. I request Ms. Megha Tata to felicitate Mr. Chetan. Come on, Team Sakshi. Please join us on stage. And last but surely not the least, Team Showboat. They are the ones who organized and did the production, the event for us. Can I please invite Mr. Sandeep, Managing Director from Showboat, to join us on stage. Sandeep, Managing Director, Showboat. Thank you, Sandeep and the entire team for working hand in hand with us today and for the last few weeks.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, a big round of applause for the day today. Thank you so much for your patience and your participation. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank a few people, because a show like this cannot happen with the support for all the partners and the team which put behind this wonderful day today. First of all, I'd like to thank our knowledge partners, UNICEF, our principal partner, Sakshi Group. Rani, really appreciate everything you've done. Super round of applause for Rani, ready, the queen. Our associate partners, Freedom Oil, our event partner, Showboat, our Honorable Governor of Telangana, who was here as our chief guest, Mr. Prasun Sen was there, but Ms. Gitanjali Master from UNICEF, Dr. Sharda from Ladli, who gave us her insights, and our eminent panelists across the day. We had some fabulous sessions, great insights, great learnings. Thank you, all of you. And once again, to Rani Reddy, without whom this would not have been possible. So on behalf of IAA, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming and being so supportive. Fabulously conducted session, brilliantly curated as well and connected. And thank you so much. You were superb.
Thank
you
you.
are the voice of change.
Thank you, ma'am.